Whenever you're ready.
All right, the meeting of the planning commission be called to order, and let's start with flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so first item on the agenda are minutes, January 10, 2023. Does anybody have any? What? Thank you. Andy. Okay, topics from the floor. Anything that's not on the public agenda. And that first move.
My name is Grady Freeheim. I watched with disgust and pity as you groveled to become the chair of this committee. Despite the fact that the planning commission staff made it clear that they didn't think you should be chair, nor did your council liaison, nor did half of your members. But you clearly had somehow done a good old boy backroom deal and got the two Russes, shame on both of you, by the way, to agree to support you in being chair. In your pathetic quest for power, you've actually lost power. Maybe you could start a flea circus so that you have something to lord over, and you might not feel a little bit better about yourself and stop your pathetic quest for power. The chair does not make motions, nor do they second, and they don't vote. In addition, the job of the chair is to be neutral and arbitrator of this meeting. If you're doing your job right, no one should know what your position is on the subject, unless there's a tie vote, and then you must break the tie. The one power that the chairs typically have is control of the agenda. But in this committee, that is controlled by your staff. So you don't even have that power. I'll be here each week to make sure that you actually do your job. I wanted to address your comments at your last meeting when you basically said that, well, Mr. Kasner's wife, Rosemary, might be a liar. Charles did nothing wrong. That's incorrect. Mr. Kasner corroborated his wives. In addition, you also forgot that the very first meeting of this commission, after you had selected him to be a member, the very first thing he did is lie to this commission. In his rebuttal to my comments about his wife's admission that she lied to the police, he stood before you and said that was not true. He stated that knowing his wife had in fact submitted that in writing, and he knew that I had a copy of it. So it was a pretty stupid lie that he knew I could prove. This demonstrates that not only is Mr. Kasner willing to lie to achieve his objectives, but he's also kind of dumb about it. Both of these reasons are why Mr. Kasner is not fit to be on this committee. Then you took it on yourself to read parts of Mr. Kasner's lie statements on the public record, even after I told you that it was full of misinformation and lies. That only taints you, but it also taints this commission and everyone that serves on it. Oh, and by the way, this is a public comment period. I'm happy for you to turn this into a debate period with the full permission of the rest of your board, because frankly, you're not very good at it. But if you want to change this into a debate, then I'm going to respond if you do it. The prior chair erred in allowing you to respond to me at your last meeting. But again, if you choose to respond, I'm happy to do that, but I'm going to respond to you. I don't make those rules, and you don't have to like them. And if you don't, there's the door. I don't think anyone would be unhappy to move back to California.
Any other public comments?
Chair Toski, we did receive an email. It's kind of related to something later on, but
I'd rather read that as part of the HB 3115 discussion. We're talking about the email from John Campbell.
that's correct. Yeah.
If you don't mind, can we read that as part of, I think it kind of pertains to that discussion.
Yep.
All right. Any other public comments?
No, I will say, Mark Gunderson is here on Zoom,
Oh, great.
so you know.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go to the minutes dated January the 10th, 2023. Comments?
Correction?
All right.
I have one. Page 3 of 7. It says there was a motion and I's Vice Chair Carey. I didn't vote and I wasn't the Vice Chair. That's all I have.
Okay. Any other?
One, same page, the motion, my name isn't included in that.
Oh, we did. Yeah. Opposite.
That must have been.
Maybe swapped it, yeah.
And then, on the 2 of 7, discussion items, architectural review, Columbia View Park. I did ask the question if there had been an audio study on that, and I never heard a response, so, I did ask for it, and I never heard a response.
Which one is this? Where are we getting?
2 of 7, architectural review, Columbia View Park. I just was asking a yes or no if there had been.
Right, any other? I did want to add to the minutes that is the permission of, this is on the Greenheim topics from the floor with the permission of Chair Carey. I read into the record the materials that were presented by Mr. Greenheim regarding his criticisms of Mr. Kasner, and I also noted for the record that they had nothing to do with Mr. Kasner. I want to make sure that those are reflected in the minutes. And that I wasn't sure what we did with the HB 3115 subcommittee, whether we left Russ Lowe on. I know there was a thought whether Ginny Carlson, but I thought we left Russ on. That was my recollection, or whether we even took a vote. So I don't know if anybody else has a recollection on that. I didn't review the record.
Yeah, what we talked about was, if there was a task force. We talked about the representation of the task force and then the discussion. You apologize to Russ Lowe for being left out essentially. Sorry, Russ. But that he could still be a part of the subcommittee. So we really didn't, it wasn't pertaining specific to the subcommittee, but that's how that was included in the conversation.
Okay, I remember that as well, so let's just make sure the minutes are clear, clarify that Mr. Lowe or Commissioner Lowe will continue to be part of the subcommittee, and then if there's a task force, Ms. Carlson will, Commissioner Carlson will be part of the task force. Unless there's further discussion or agreement.
Yeah, unless you want to change it up, just no rules.
Okay, and then on the new proactive item proposals, page 6 of 7. I recall saying on the record that all jurisdictional items are set forth in at least the proposed lack of items that I had submitted. All items that potentially would confer jurisdiction upon the commission. All sections, that is, so that in the event our jurisdiction was ever challenged, that we would not be held hostage to an applicable section to would confer jurisdiction upon the commission that was not stated. So I just think that we did have that discussion, and that was the reasons why it included so many jurisdictional items. That should be reflected in the minutes. So then, does anybody have any problem with just updating the minutes as we've discussed and having them updated and approved? Go through it again. Anybody needs?
I move we accept as the minutes as modified by all three people asked for it. Second.
Favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is the architectural review, 343 First Street. Dale Lordison. Crooked, I'm sorry, Dave Lordison, Crooked Creek Brewery. Come on up, Dave.
We'll do a staff presentation and
And then just to be clear, is this like a recommendation? What are we doing here? No.
The packet.
it's not a public hearing, so there's.
Okay.
It's a discussion item. So this will be a recommendation to staff on its compliance with the architectural guidelines.
That's right.
Okay.
You ready? Okay, great.
Jane.
So I've got up here our historic district map, which should look familiar. And I just wanted to point out where we're at. I'm sure you have all been to the dockside or what will be the former dockside building. But what this map shows is that this is the subject property here, these double lots, and it's just outside the historic district boundary. So the reason we're here tonight is not because of a historic district relation, but a riverfront district. So the hatch markings, so you can see that, indicate riverfront district zoning. And any exterior alterations to a building have to comply with the architectural guidelines for the riverfront district. Shouldn't be news to a lot of you, you've done these before. So what Dave has submitted is a minor site development review to do a number of things. He wants to add a 200 square foot approximately storage off the back side of this building. And then there's a whole slew of exterior modifications to the building that we're going to walk through kind of in order as they are in the guidelines. And then we can invite Dave up to answer any questions that we might still have about the proposal. So the building itself, we actually do have a site design review for it on file from the 80s. And at that time, they added 830 square foot to the existing 1260 square foot building. So now we've got about a 2000 square foot building, and it straddles the property lines that are shown here. So the building is kind of centered on those two property lines. So let's get into the proposal here. Okay. Okay. So in order, the memo kind of goes through, like I said, in order of the guidelines. So it might seem like we're jumping all over the place. So I apologize for that. So the first thing the guidelines talk about are awnings and canopies. And the applicant in this case, I've got to move this. It's just like right in the way. Hold on. It's out of here. So here's the existing front of the building. The reason for the site development review is that Dave, owner of Crooked Creek, would like to relocate his business to the former dockside. So one of the main things he's doing to the front facade is removing this existing 42-foot long metal awning. And the guidelines generally discourage removing awnings. The guidelines like awnings. In particular, the guidelines like them because they promote pedestrian activity. They help prevent, rain, weather exposure, sun. So one of the things we talk about in the memo is, do the other improvements that Dave's doing to this building make up for the lack of that awning. And so we'll talk about them as we go through this, but he's proposing some changes to these windows, which accommodate that removal of the awning. And then he'll also have outdoor seating along here, along the extra wide sidewalk. And so there might be enough for the commission to kind of point to say, well, you're still promoting pedestrian activity. You still got outdoor dining. And then the other two things he's doing for awnings related are replacing this existing one over the main entry and then adding a new one off the side of the building where the new entry to the upstairs unit will be. I kind of passed over this, but there is an existing dwelling on the second floor. This was around in the 80s when they did that site development review, so it's been around a long time. And Dave can talk about this a little bit more, but I don't think it's been used for quite some time, and so they're doing significant renovations to it and changing the entry to be more habitable. You'll see there's an image of where the existing entry is, and it's quite precarious. There's a gangway from the topography in there, and I'll show you a photo when we get there, but so a lot's to do with awnings. Then the next thing is the building facade and entry. So entries to buildings are important to the guidelines, and preserving existing entries is also important. So nothing's changing with this existing entry. He is proposing a major renovation to the facade. So there's this existing wood siding, I'll show a photo of it, that's severely deteriorated. And the guidelines talk about restoring existing siding where possible. And the applicant indicated that there's been such a lack of maintenance on this siding that it's just impossible to restore. There's a lot of rot. He said there are areas without flashing. And so he's proposing to completely replace the existing wood siding with a similar vertical shiplap siding, which will be painted a dark neutral color instead of stained, which is what they currently are. It doesn't look like this siding is original. It looks like it was installed in the 80s when they did that expansion I mentioned. So I feel like in general, although it's not restoration of the existing siding, it does comply with the guidelines because it's just beyond repair. Regarding the entry, it talks about, the guidelines talk about how you should incorporate kick plates into new entry doors, and that seemed to be missing on the plans. I don't think it was intentional because the narrative talks about installing a kick plate. So maybe the applicant can address whether or not there will be a kick plate at the bottom of the door. That's just a small thing. So while we've got this up, this is the existing access to the dwelling. So over here. Sorry, it's like. So this is standing up on the bluff, so the backside of the dockside building. And this is the existing access to that dwelling unit. So here's the unit itself. So we're actually on the second floor here. So in order to get up here, you have to traverse across like up these janky stairs and then cross this gangway over a walkway to get to the dwelling. So part of the proposal is to add a new entry along the side right here. So a staircase up and then install a new door into that dwelling unit. So I'll show you what that looks like on the facade plans. So here's where that new staircase will go off the side of the building. Here's where that janky gangway currently exists. And there's a significant slope alongside the back of the building. And that's caused some deterioration of that back wall. The stormwater is just running into that wall. And so he's proposing some stormwater improvements that will help maintain the building in the long term. So here's the facade as proposed. So here's where the new staircase will go. Here's that new apartment entry. And here's the door without a kick plate as shown. So something else he's proposing related to entries is this new overhead door. So this isn't a traditional entry, traditional design to have an overhead door. But I think what the applicant's trying to do is connect the outdoor dining area with the inside a little bit more. And so he's proposing a roll-up door on the south side of the building. I think the question in the memo is just, does this commission feel comfortable with kind of a non-traditional new entry being proposed? So building lighting, you can see that there's some new lighting proposed on all facades. There's some along the side. I like that they're all consistent design as presented. And also the fixture type is in line with what the guidelines like to see. It's that gooseneck style, traditional lighting. So I think that complies. One of the arguments for replacement of these windows is you do get some new exterior lighting that complies. So I think that's one thing the commission can kind of look to with removal of that awning and the windows in the front. Let's see. So maintenance, the applicant talked about how when they first assessed the building, there was a large list of deferred maintenance and needed repairs. And that included a complete restoration of that back wall that's up against the bluff. And so, the guidelines talk about maintaining buildings so that they don't deteriorate. And I think the applicant's doing a good job at making sure this building is going to stay around for a long time. Material, building, and colors. So specifically, the guidelines say that when you use wood siding, it should be painted to match using a palette of earth tones or muted colors. I think the proposal complies with that. He talks about a dark neutral tone. So the roof, he is relocating a heating furnace onto the roof, and the guidelines talk about making sure any rooftop facilities are screened and that you should try to avoid them being visible from the street as much as possible. So the location of that unit is on the southwest corner. And so it's not clear if that has siding proposed so that it's not visible. And I think that's something we would want to include as a condition or get clarity on. It's very likely that that would be visible from the outdoor dining area that he's proposing, and then also from First Street as it extends south. So we just want to make sure those mechanical units aren't visible. So the structure in the back. So that's this new kind of in black here. This is the 200 square foot new storage structure. So about half the storage is for coolers. He's got a lot of kegs he needs to store, and then about half is for dry storage. And it's not super clear. It's definitely covered and there's walls proposed, but it's not super clear what the siding of those walls are. So if you look at the facade, you can see what I'm talking about a little bit more. So here's that new structure off the back. And you can see there's a cooler here. And then here's the entry to the cooler. But from the back side, what is here? That's what's unknown. It's not clear if that's sided to match or if it's even walled. It doesn't appear like it is. So, this will be visible from up above. There's residences that can see down onto this area. If you're a customer, you're definitely not going to go back there and see it. It's just for the people that live up on the bluff. And so I think that's somewhere where the commission can get some more feedback. Windows. We know windows are sensitive in the guidelines, and wherever possible, we want to retain existing windows. He is proposing to replace and increase the size of all of the front-facing windows. So currently they're about 4 feet high, and he's proposing a 6-foot max height for those windows. They would still stay 8 feet wide. Also, currently the windows, and you can see this in the photos, aren't transparent. They have a tint to them. The guidelines are very explicit that storefront or bottom floor windows should be see-through. And so I think one of the arguments to make for replacement is that he's increasing the sight into the storefront or the bottom floor, the restaurant in this case. So even though it's replacement, I think there's a lot of arguments that you could say he's actually improving the situation quite a bit. He also talks about water leaking into the building. There wasn't appropriate flashing, or they weren't installed correctly, or just rot in general. So I think there's some good arguments there. The second floor windows, so he is talking about replacing these apartment windows. But he's just gonna replace them with kind of like for like, or at least that's what's shown in the facade here. The guidelines talk about second floor residential windows, having a vertical emphasis or being twice as tall vertically as they are wide to represent a more traditional design. Clearly, these are not twice as tall as they are wide. And then the guidelines also talk about placing them symmetrically. Also not something that is proposed. So I think that's somewhere where the application could really be improved, or if the commission has any suggestions about the upper floor windows to make them look more traditional or in line with traditional storefronts. So that's kind of a crash course in the application. This was something I thought was going to be simple, but then as I started working on it, it really touched each component of the guidelines. So I hope you have that document with you when you're reviewing it. I think it helps a lot. I don't include the whole set of guidelines in each application, so.
Does the guidelines call for the windows to have casements
Since like the, for instance, mean,
to be trimmed out?
I don't know if it addresses it explicitly.
It's something that we talked about street standards in the past. I wasn't sure if it's actually in the book.
Yeah,
I see a lot of, I mean, when you go from aluminum windows to vinyl windows, there's usually, I just didn't know as far as matching upper and lower, and as far as the windows obviously are substantially wider, but I just wondered how dressy that front of that building is gonna be.
In the picture, there's shutters or fake shutters each side.
Yep, and I talked about that in the memo too. It's not clear if the shutters are staying, but generally fake shutters are not something the guidelines want. It even addresses the.
I just meant to actually trim out the,
Yeah,
because even though it isn't historic, it is historic adjacent. And
so you're just wondering about the trim on the outside.
right, how are the windows installed, and how do they match the upstairs? I mean, obviously, it's a different kind of window, but does it look homogeneous like it was a plan together? And I understand that up is a dwelling and the downstairs is retail, and that's kind of something in the waterfront plan that we talked about as a workplace space.
Mhm.
And so to have it be open to the public on the main floor and be private upstairs is not a new idea.
Yeah,
To
so
just have them be more, talk to each other a little bit.
in the application, it talks about them being commercial style aluminum or fiberglass style frames. I don't know if that answers your question, but it leaves it up.
Right, but if they could be made out of different things, but be installed similarly, so that from the street, they would look the same. If somebody walking by isn't gonna be able to see those upstairs windows to know what they're made out of, but they know walking down the street,
Sure,
they went cheap on those
right.
kind of thing.
You're open to mixed materials, but they should look the same.
Right, it's kind of, it's like you going along, and you got one cheap one. If you trim it all the same, it's like nobody's gonna. I just think it's a chance to really upgrade the facade of that. It's always bothered me that restaurant had so little visibility to the river. And the windows needed to be bigger and needed to not be covered, and it needed more lighting down there at night because it's so dark. And so I would say that this is like, it hit 3 of my top criteria for the building. straight off the bat, but there's just a little bit more for the fill-in.
Yeah,
And I mean, maybe the applicant can.
yeah.
You're ready to meet for me to.
Yeah, if you're ready.
reach any of this, I happy to respond.
Yeah, I think
Any other questions of staff?
we can always circle back. It's not as formal as a public hearing.
I guess I've got a question, Jenny, also in your comments about the second floor windows. Part of what it should be. I guess my question is. It's not what it should be currently today either, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. I think if this building were new, I think we would comment on those windows not complying with the guidelines.
Okay.
Yeah.
And but in coming in and doing a restoration or a renovation like this. Do we usually try to get it to where it meets the guidelines or? That's truly just a question.
Yeah, I think the reason it was on the table is he said he's replacing the second floor windows. And so it seems like a good opportunity to replace them with something that's more in line with the guidelines. If you weren't touching that upper unit, maybe we wouldn't be talking about it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Does the overhead door on the south end have vision panels in it?
Say that again?
Does the overhead door on the south end have vision panels in it? Is it?
It looks like it's.
Oh, was it open? Are they glass
They're
pane?
glass panels, yeah. And that may actually be changing, because energy standards have changed as of January first, and now those overhead doors don't meet current energy standards.
I wonder, is all the things I'm seeing now, it's all doing these doors. There's no more up and down doors. They're
A
all.
lot, well, yeah, I mean, this is new as of this year. So it's a brand new guideline. This was drawn last year before new standards, so.
Saying that they may get removed altogether or that the.
No, we're looking at doing, just a more traditional like French door.
It would still have a door there, but it would be just a push door.
That's correct. I had our architect mock it up real quick, so I'll pass that around if you would like to.
Oh, sweet, you made copies. Let's see.
To answer your question, Charles, about previous examples. This is the first time that I can remember since we've adopted these standards that we've been faced with this kind of circumstance. Usually it's been additions like the roof addition to the Muckle building.
Three copies.
So small modifications, so kind of a revamp of a building like this. Don't have a lot of history with that.
And if I can just preface this whole conversation by saying this has been a challenge to put this together to begin with, because these architectural guidelines are based on a commercial vernacular style. Says right there on the front page. This is not a commercial vernacular style building. This is a concrete masonry building, tavern style building that has been sort of spruced up to look like a little bit of a Western building at some point in the 80s, I guess. So,
Could you just give us what you think? Can you start with your presentation with what you understand the history of the building to be and
sure, as far
some of the things that you're working with, some of the
yes,
materials,
yeah, history as far as what it's been.
just what you understand, when was the building first built? When was there an expansion? What materials is the building constructed of, different components of the building?
Sure, built in 48. As far as I understand, the apartment is original to the building, was there when it was built. So basically where everything from the apartment below is original, everything to the left of the apartment, it was added in 1985. And I believe all the siding was added in 85. The windows, I think, were all replaced in 85. The existing apartment windows are those very cheap windows, they're just single pane aluminum, very thin windows. We're looking to do a significant upgrade. But again, it's tricky because it's not a building that really falls into the guidelines that the standards were developed for. We're trying to push the building into that direction, so that it does complement the historic district and riverfront district more closely. But there's a little push and pull, to kind of find that sweet spot where it hits all those marks. And you're talking about the lighting, and we're looking to pull that awning off, but adding lighting to replace that, which they both are encouraged.
Now, is
Yeah.
the awning over the door, the size of the door, the awning over the door and the signage all gonna remain the same? Size,
Door, the signage.
the entry door?
Yeah.
the signage over the door and the awning, all that is staying the same size.
The entry door will stay the same size. The awning over the existing door will be the same width. It will not be as deep. It will be a little bit shallower. The sign will be addressed at a future date, but we're not looking to replace the sign, but with
Okay, but
something.
it's not going beyond the envelope at this time.
And if the sign were changed as part of this, you would be reviewing
Be a
it
whole
again.
different deal.
If he's changing the size of the sign, you guys will see it again.
And then the material on the side of the upstairs, is that stucco?
It's stucco, yeah. So that's a concrete masonry.
So
going
we
all
just
the way
painted a
across.
complimentary, it'll be a different texture, but it'll be like tone on tone.
It will be the
So
same
you-
color as the building.
Flat, one color and stucco, the same color.
Exactly.
So it'll all look unified where it does not currently.
It does not currently, that's correct.
Well, what's under the stucco on the upstairs?
Cinder block.
Cinder block.
Yeah.
Okay, so trying to change the shape of the windows and the location of the windows is gonna involve
It would be extremely,
removal of cinder block and structural discussion, and things like that.
that's correct. And again, going back to my initial comment, this is not a commercial vernacular style building, that those narrow tall windows, are really best suited for. I did have my architect throw in some windows that fit in the same space. If you want to look at that. These are more like casement style windows. Pass those around. So they're chosen without doing any modifications. Building. So. If you get hung up on that, I'm flexible.
So I have another question. What do you think about the potential for trimming the windows out so that we raise the profile of the windows more vertical? So that we get a vertical look, even though the window is challenged to move vertically because of the cinder block, etc.
Talking about all windows?
Just the
or
three,
other
just the
levels?
three upper ones to try to.
So if you look at his
Yeah, did you see
architect's design, that's what it looks like.
Oh, it is, okay.
He passed this one around and it does,
They look turned out.
yeah,
They look more vertical.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's exactly what the intent of.
Yeah.
Including that guideline in there was.
Do the best you can.
Yeah, I would say if one was gonna be trimmed out, they would all be trimmed out. Not my preference, I prefer a cleaner look without trim, and that's how the current windows are installed. They've got siding that butts all the way up to the window.
Would that be meaning that windows could be?
That's a awning window,
Oh.
that's over a kitchen, so that one will go out
Oh, I see.
a couple inches this way.
My first impression looking at the front elevation, looks very modern.
The design is definitely to modernize it, it's really not that different,
Modern
the
style.
you've got the diagonal siding, highlighting the entryway. On front and south side, and you've got taller windows, but besides that. there's
But
really-
the shiplap and the lighting is very nautical, looks very much like, blue tin or whatever.
The shiplap is existing, that's what the
Yeah,
current.
it all
side is.
looks.
Yeah.
It could happen to them.
I think the drawing makes it look more old, black and white, and it's all gonna be painted one color.
Right.
I'm not gonna see that.
It's not gonna be striped.
The stripes so bad, it's the stripes are getting me like,
Yeah, it'll be textured,
it's like metal wall or something.
but the close-up of the lights, the lanterns definitely looks really nautical to me. It looks like a riverfront building.
Yeah, and again, the intention is to push the building,
I'm a
closer to
traditionalist, it
historical
looks fine to me.
standards, but maintaining the integrity of the building.
It doesn't look
Which
out
is
of
not
place.
commercial vernacular, so.
What's going on here?
The side wall, does that have walls in that little shed thing?
Yeah, so half of that is a walk-in cooler, that will be
But there will
built
be
back there.
exterior walls.
The walk-in cooler is built, has walls built into it. The storage shed will have walls, yes. We would like to use T111. I know that's not acceptable. It's my impression that that's not acceptable where it's visible. That is in no way visible from the street. at all. So we would like to use like a higher end, plywood type T111.
What's the overhang back there? How far?
I can answer that.
No. How far out do the eaves go from the wall? Does it meet like this, or does it meet like this?
I'm not sure that I understand.
Oh, no, it is almost black.
Got a ring.
It is almost
Yeah,
black.
that structure is separated from the building, so there's 5 foot clearance
Oh, okay.
between the roof and that storage shed.
Yeah, this is a walkway that connects all around the building, right?
Yeah, there's existing plumbing that
So there's a gap.
runs along the backside of that building, so it's easier to just push that structure off the building rather than redo all that plumbing. And we needed a walkway anyways, so it just makes it easier.
But it will be enclosed. So
will
nobody
be-
can,
it will be.
critters and people can't get in there.
That's correct, yes,
You painted the color of the building.
that's correct. Yeah, the existing shiplap on the building actually looks like a high-end T111,
Yeah.
so, you know. Hopefully we can get away with that, if not, we'll cite it saying it's not that big of a
How,
structure, so.
how far is the staircase from the property line?
Pretty close, yeah. Show ya. So you can kind of see this planter box is the edge of your property, is that right, Dave?
That's correct.
Yeah, so. Just a couple feet between the edge.
That's not like encroaching, you're okay
So-
with that?
The Riverfront District doesn't have as normal residential setbacks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
check it.
it likes 0 lot lines, especially along the fronts.
Oh, okay.
streets, So
So it's not a danger zone when it's commercial.
the building code might require different fire separation or fire resistant construction, but. As far as planning, we're like, great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Making sure.
How do you envision the building being used? Just the type of activity and when would it be open and how do you envision it?
I envision it being used to consume a lot of beer. Hopefully.
Perfect. At what time of the day? Not like it's gonna be open a day, at night, both?
Our intention at opening is to have like mid-afternoon till 10 o'clock hours. Ultimately, we would like to have full lunch hours, so 11 o'clock to 10 p.m.
But that's not the purview of this here, of this recommendation. It's just the building stuff, right?
That's right.
Well, I think that in flexibility and discussing the changes that the owner wants to make, we should be thinking about the idea of how he thinks he's gonna run his business.
It's not our job.
Um,
It's not our job. It's
Uh,
totally outside of the purview of the planning commission. It's an allowed use. He's using it for an allowed use. Doesn't matter whether you're serving noodles or if you're serving salad roll. It still has alcohol with it. She's not changing the use, so we don't get to discuss his hours of business. I mean, the business is there, has changed hours and days of the week. So many times in the last 5 years, I can't keep up. So it's like, it's not up to us to decide his business.
why don't you remove the awning?
Why do I want to remove the awning?
Yeah.
Because the awning is hung way low over the windows. It creates a black hole in that space. Along with tinted windows that are squat and just an odd size. So keep the awning, it's pushing it up. I honestly think that the gooseneck lighting is a much better trade-off design wise, and we get lighting and we get an awning because we still have awnings. We get lighting as well.
So to address the furnace enclosure, what?
Oh, yeah, we can screen that, that's fine. We can just put a horizontal screen around it. Yeah, it wasn't, to my understanding, we needed that, but that's not a problem to add that, so we want to put that as a condition.
It does look like you have some screening or railing up on the second floor. This might work, but it looks like it might also be see-through. I don't know if that's.
So is that where the mechanicals are on that more westerly portion?
The mechanicals, if you look at an overhead view,
So here's,
so you can see there's kind of a step Yeah, so currently the mechanical is inside the kitchen, so the water heater and the furnace are inside the kitchen. It's got a residential furnace, so we're looking to replace it with a gas pack furnace that's mounted on the roof to gain that space. So we'll basically be mounted almost right over the structural wall that goes down the middle of the building and divides the dining room from the kitchen. And that's very close to where the air conditioning unit currently sits. That just allows us to drop the ducting straight through, and then
Have more room in your kitchen.
a lot of space. And the water heater will just flip into that exterior closet that's right against that same wall.
But we can add a line that says that furnace improvements to be screened from street view.
Yeah, and the relevance of the guidelines is it just talks about not being visible. Yep, exactly. And, you know, quite frankly, if this were just a staff decision, we would have that conditioning anyway.
Right.
What else can I tell you about it?
What kind of food you guys serve?
That I cannot tell you.
That's okay.
We're very close on knowing what that's gonna be.
I hope you have lots of PR when you come out, so we'll know, so our community will know, and they can stop guessing.
We will. We're gonna be subbing out the kitchen operation to someone else, so we don't have at least.
Oh, the door. Are you putting a kick plate on your door?
Yes, we will put a quick plate on the door.
Okay, great.
When you hope to be open.
We would like to be open by Memorial Day, which I think is pretty ambitious, but gotta have goals, right?
Yeah.
We're probably gonna do the construction in phases at this point is what we're thinking. We would have liked to do it all at once. But it's probably gonna be done in a couple stages.
It sounds like you guys covered all the conditions.
Hey, should we see if there's anybody against this before we talk about it, or it's just the,
Not hearing.
It's not a hearing.
It's just a recommendation. Do we agree with what staff's recommendation is?
well, first question is, does the commission feel that the awning changes are consistent with the guidelines? Removing the awning and then changing the facade with the lights like that.
Replacement of 2 awnings and then removal of the one. Or I'm sorry, adding, adding one. Yeah. exactly, 3 different awnings.
I like it better.
I would agree that the ones we're gonna remove is too low to begin.
It obscures half the building. And it makes it super, for the long dark winter, it makes that whole front of the building dark, makes it into the street dark. And it's like, it makes their parking out toward the end very difficult to see. It looks kind of spooky, mysterious. And so it's like, I've always wished that they had better lighting, and I think that from a diner standpoint, being able to look out at the river and not like that is definitely more desirable. To, it's just, it seems like it's better for the customer, it seems like it's better for the pedestrian. To know what's going on in there, it seems less bar-like, it seems more family-like,
Thank you.
so. I think it's an improvement.
Okay, so anybody, that sounds like it's, everyone's for that.
Great.
Then,
Siding,
yes,
siding.
so the staff have, what is the siding that staff, has recommended on this, or that?
I feel like the applicant made a case that the existing siding can't be repaired or restored. So does the commission agree with that? And that painting a neutral color is appropriate, and instead of staining, which is what was there today.
And painting would be easier to maintain and keep
Yeah.
consistent.
Yep.
Because that takes a big beating out there exposed to the wind.
And it's a very similar site, and the gap will be slightly different, but it's very similar.
Great.
Okay, and I think we covered the kick plate.
And they don't have to respond, the color wise, it just says dark neutral, is that? Within the colorway, there's nothing more specific color wise.
No, the guidelines even say it shouldn't be up to the property owner as long as it's within the palette of the guidelines, and it is, so.
Super, just making sure.
And
Not
then
pumpkin.
So what about the overhead door?
for the French doors,
Yes, the French doors, as, did everyone get a chance to look at them? Everyone see these?
Yeah. I'm happier about those than the roll.
And good.
Good, okay.
That's a better option. I had issue with the roll. They don't have that.
Everybody feeling the same way about that?
How you feel, right?
Okay.
I like the overhead view, go up to the roof.
Right.
They have similar doors there, and I think they pulled it off really nicely up there.
Yeah, it seemed, I like it up there, but I think on the ground floor, I think I like the French doors better.
Can't see it from the end.
Right, for the walkers by, it looks more put together, the French doors do.
Yeah, I can go either way with it. Like I said, I don't know if we can even do an overhead door because of energy standards. You know, our ceiling height is pretty limited in there. We're gonna push the ceiling up as high as we can, but it's still not
It's tight.
that tall. So even with an overhead door that opens into the space, you know, I'm not crazy about the height that we would do, so French door is fine with me.
Commission, but I think Jenny, you were mentioning the ones that, I'm not sure what they call them, but the
Barn
Not
door.
full.
No, they're accordion.
accordion like things that kind of go to the side, open up like you would have like the overhead, you know,
Yes.
garage type door, but it does it in that way.
Yeah.
French doors will actually do a similar thing. They just open up flat against.
And the slide against the back.
I'm just thinking about the long wet times of years that we have, the French doors are gonna be super nice, even if they're closed.
Okay,
Like light.
Okay, and then does anybody disagree? Staff believes that the lighting proposed complies with the guidelines. Anybody have any disagreement with that? Okay, and then staff is in agreement with the maintenance sections. Anybody disagree with staff recommendations there? Okay, and then we discussed materials and colors, so everyone's okay with that discussion. Anybody want anything more on materials and colors? And then we are gonna put in the approval, the screening for the mechanical unit. Am I correct there, Jenny?
Yep.
Okay, and then,
So this one is where I'd like to get the commission's feedback about the T111. The guidelines explicitly prohibit that as siding, but if you guys make the finding, you know, customers aren't gonna go back there. It's purely a storage facility for their customers, I'm sorry, their staff, their employees. It will be visible from above. That would be the only, and maybe the roof will be more visible than the actual siding, given the topography, really.
will the neighbors see it? That's my question.
Well, it's so sloped,
You have to
Um,
look straight down.
the near,
You're a couple hundred yards away.
yeah,
Shadow probably of the hill.
the lot just next to it is vacant. You know, there will be a neighbor eventually, but
If the roof is overhanging more, it would hide the wall more.
Yeah, and again, the T111 style is actually designed to replicate a shiplap.
Pretty similar.
So,
Like
from
your,
the distance that anyone's gonna see it.
so like you have a horizontal in the front, you want to live in the back, it'll be different. There with the picture. We're there.
so just because of this circumstance, I don't want T111 all across.
No,
the
yeah, I
district, but because of the.
Because it's in a shed
And
capacity,
it's small,
it's a small shed
Yeah.
capacity behind the building.
I think we made a similar exception to the power station out. I think we discussed that because it's gonna be slow, low
oh,
visible.
the pump station.
Correct.
Yeah, we said because of the scale and the location. Which we can say here too,
Right.
small scale, the location, visibility, okay, cool, that sounds good.
And then. Is everyone? What are the thoughts about the ups, we'll start with the downstairs windows. Everybody's okay with downstairs windows?
Yes.
Okay, and the upstairs windows, the new proposal.
It's good.
Okay. And. Okay, so I think we covered it.
We need a motion,
Well, motion to accept staff recommendations.
All in favor?
Right?
I,
Anyone
Abstain.
against? Okay, Russ abstains. Okay, well, that's enough to carry it.
Yep.
So, okay, Dave, thanks.
Thanks, appreciate your time.
We will be all there for Memorial Day to toast to your success.
Don't hold your breath. I'll try.
Okay. So then the next item is counselor liaison attendance.
Pull Mark into the jerk unders.
Yeah, so this item was added, after a brief discussion with Mark, about attendance and stuff, and so we wanted to have a discussion, for his benefit. Because of the council liaison role to communicate planning commission issues to the council. And sometimes we have long meetings, and we just wanted to have, discussion about that. So Mark, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So this agenda item is for you.
Okay,
All right, we can see you now. Great.
I know it's a little dark.
Your witness protection program?
Yeah. No, it's just where the lighting is. That's not much better.
Center.
So Mark, my understanding based on the opinion commission we had was, and correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't review our emails, was I think your participation via Zoom and the receptiveness of that to the commission, and also the duration of your involvement in the meeting and the ability to attain all the concerns of the planning commission for that day. Does that kind of overview it as you understood it?
Yeah,
Well, I'd like to hear, Counselor Gunderson, what are your concerns?
that you guys weren't really getting along as a team. It seemed like you were separated. And correct me if I'm wrong, I just didn't seem like that was the way to work the commission. Am I misunderstanding? Does anybody else feel that way?
Well, I think that you saw a particularly contentious planning commission meeting, and I think for the last year, we've gone through some growing pains, and that we're definitely going to be working more as a team moving forward.
That was my only concern.
We'd like you to participate as much as possible.
Okay. When I feel like I have something to say, I'll say it.
Excellent.
You're always gonna be on Zoom.
Well, I don't know, what do you know?
No, am I always going to be on Zoom? No.
I mean, there's been a history of, different ideas of what different people would like to have the role of the commission be. How much commitment people wanted to make to various items, and these are things that the commission has worked its way through as a body. Very difficult times last year, I might add. But we come together as a commission, we made agreements, we made procedures. And now I think this year we're intending to move forward with them, and how we move forward with them actually is gonna be something new for the commission in some respects. And hopefully it'll be part of making St. Helens even better than it is That's the goal.
Excellent.
Mark, so is there a typical limited time availability that you have for planning commission meetings? Say 2 hours, once it's more than 2 hours, you're starting to get sketchy with what you have to deal with?
Yeah, 2 hours is a good time frame for me.
So then if there are concerns that the commission has that they would like to convey to you as their counselor, you would prefer that to be stated in those first 2 hours?
Yes.
Okay,
So up to this time, our liaison has pretty much stayed as long as wherever the meetings were. 4 hours, 5 hours, 2 hours, hour and a half, whatever they were. I'm just telling you the history. I'm not saying you have to, just.
But I definitely appreciate, Counselor Gunderson's desire to make good use of staff time, good use of all of our time, about staying on plan and not grinding things into the dirt. You know, I think that's where I'm coming from, you know, it's like, I think if we are having, you know, a big hearing and there's attorneys here and it's cutting edge, of course, it makes sense to make sure we vetted everything, but we don't need to, sometimes you need to take that liberty to say, let's push this off to next month. Because everybody's getting tired, we're not making our best decisions, everybody's frazzled. And make that call and not go 5 hours after people have worked an 8-hour day. So that's just what I'm getting out of it. You know, for me, I like staying on time. I like making the best use of my time.
Last year, we decided to start at 6 o'clock, so the meetings wouldn't go so late. That wasn't starting at 6 o'clock to add another hour. That was to actually end an hour earlier. And I'd like to see us getting out an hour earlier than have in the past.
So I have a question. Is there a problem if I zoom in? Do you guys all want me there?
It makes no difference to me.
Can you hear okay?
Yeah, I can hear fine.
From my perspective, I just would like a level of engagement from the council liaison that is reflective of the role that we play with the city as being the citizen body. And that we make decisions based upon evidence and law, and that we are trying to plan. That would be my preference. I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel.
Well, I don't have a problem with you attending via Zoom, because there's gonna be times when, like last month's meeting, where I'm gonna have to attend by Zoom. Just because of commitments for work and other things. So that part doesn't bother me. And I would second Jenny's comments that I like to stay on track and not trying to rush through anything, but there's also no reason to belabor things as long as.
Well, it's just getting more comfortable with each other as a team. Because I know in my history with planning commission, if I had issues at the packet, I addressed them with Jacob before the meeting ever happened. So we didn't have to go over every nail and every screw of a project, because I'd already got my questions answered, and then it made sense to me. And I didn't waste the whole committee's time with my own understanding of the project. So it's like, if something doesn't seem cut dry or seems fishy, I think giving Jacob a chance to prepare is good. You know, if you have a question, to make sure that he comes prepared to answer it. You know, it makes his, you know, don't try to stop Jacob at a meeting.
or Jenny if it's her item,
Yeah,
or Jenny if it's her item.
but just to try to be efficient with the use of time of staff, because this is 3 paid staff here until 11, 12 o'clock. A lot of money, worth something. My family's worth something. I definitely appreciate that, boundaries and with the city's resources.
The ambivalence do the job that we need. We need a counselor here or Zoom. So we can speak to them of what the council is doing. We're supposed to represent the people and we have one access to the city council. And that's our guy, whoever that is. So if he doesn't like the way we handle the meeting or do, then I don't know. Then you get someone else. Simple as that.
Any comments?
I guess my attitude is be present when you can, and if circumstances prevent that, then that's what the Zoom link is for. I don't think the Zoom link is for people to attend the meeting on a regular basis. That way it's for when somebody can't attend. And, you know, I took advantage of that my first few months on the commission because I was working overseas and unable to be present, but normally a default is be present, and if you can't, and enjoy my Zoom.
Zoom, planning commissions for a while, started COVID, and it was much more preferable to be in person. I'd say that. I work remotely, my job, I worked in my office 5 days in the last 3 years, and it's not as good as being in person.
Any comments from staff on this subject? Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, I guess I would defer to the city council because, you know, you answer to your fellow city councilors, it's not the reverse. We can have our opinion, but ultimately it goes back to Rick and your fellow members of city council, how much they think you need to be here. You know, our other city councilors how are they handling their committee meetings? I know, and there's been other commissions historically that have really long meetings and have had to address this in the past. That meetings go on and councilors address them accordingly. So I think it would be our council's discretion as a team, what they think they value and what our role of our connection to you is.
When you were our
I
liaison,
never missed a minute.
you never, everything, your own
Never
interaction was
with here until you guys all left.
take our discussion back to council because you understood what we were talking about.
I understood that you guys did the due process and you guys did your due diligence and you deserve to be heard. And that was my job, is to take that back to
And
council.
that's what we need.
Yeah, we're gonna be talking about making suggestions that will shape the future of St. Helens. You know, there are a lot of things that the people come to me and say, we need these things addressed. They aren't being addressed by the council. I've discussed in the past privately with counselors, certain aspects of things that people have come to me about, and frankly, some of the counselors have stated they're uncomfortable taking on certain items because they're concerned about backlash from elements within the city. And so what I hear is that people want change and they want change for the better, and they're not getting it through the council. And I see that we have the power and the duty to actually plan and to try to make the city a better place, and we plan to do that. And so I think having your involvement and your input, your understanding of what we're thinking about and collaboration as much as we can would be very beneficial.
I agree.
Nice. You know, that way you can hear what we're hearing, you can hear what we're discussing, and then you can go back and say, this is what's going on with the planning commission, and you know, provide your perspective to us and to them. So
I've done that.
I appreciate it, you know, so. Okay, anything else from anybody else? Counselor Gunderson, anything else before we wrap up this part of the agenda?
No, if you want something from me, all you have to do is ask.
Believe me, that's coming.
I figured it would be. I'm not trying to get off on a bad foot at all. I'm just saying, you know,
No, we're gonna ask some things of you, and I think part of the things that one of the things that I want to bring up during this meeting is we are gonna ask for more budget for the planning department. We asked that last year when Councilor Berkeley was, and we put it on the budget committee. Didn't make it in the budget, but we had a discussion that time, you know, that's not on the agenda right now, but it's going to be coming, so. Just because our excellent planners are doing a great job, but they are getting assistance. And here we tried to get them assistance, and this year we're gonna ask for it again. So that's one of the things is gonna be a big ask. If we can, I know the budget's limited. But we asked last year and it's gonna be coming forward again this year. And so that's gonna be definitely something.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on this subject before we close this item out? Okay, and I thank you for bringing this up, Mark. Appreciate it. All right, so let's talk about vision sharing for future meetings. This is kind of a Steve agenda item. And so if I will kick it off. So I would like, and I think the planning commission would like to plan, and that is looking at different issues that the city has and trying to address them, like some of these proactive items that we've got that we haven't considered yet, that we can actually hash things through and discuss them. And one thing that I would like to do is actually get to know each other better and sit down in a collaborative type structure, which means, you know, sitting down, like, you know, the city council at their work session meetings, they sit in a circle. Sometimes, or when they have their special session, and they sit across from each other, they talk to each other. And I think it'd be good for us to begin, you know, and Councilor Gunderson's observation about we weren't working well together, we're working well as a team. And I think that's an apt. I think that he saw us struggling to move forward on a decision. So what I'd like to do is just, I guess if I had my vision, would be that we would first start by sitting down and just meeting each other, talking to each other, finding out who each other's are, why we're on this planning commission, what our goals are of the planning commission. And then move on to each of our visions of St. Helens. And, you know, Brady came up and said, you know, oh, Steve, you blew it. You're not going to be powerful. And honestly, good, because I think we're in a renaissance in this city, and we have the chance to make this city even better than it is. And there are needs that we can all see. And it's by people coming together and collaborating and trying to solve problems and helping the city council do its job that we can come together and move the city forward. And so what is the vision that everybody has of St. Helens? I have a vision of St. Helens that I would like to share. I'm hoping that each one of us has a vision. And we can all share that vision, and then we could work toward how do we bring these visions together to generate a general plan, generate specific things that we can talk about, and move forward with planning. And I would like to see that we begin each meeting with 1 hour plan. Whether it's agenda items, proactive items, discussion items, try and move forward our planning items for 1 hour. And then get down to the business, like if we need to do hearings and things like that, that we stop our planning and then move forward. We begin by planning. That is my idea of the vision for the future meetings of our planning commission and how we would move forward. So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts about that, and if so, it'd be great to share them at this time.
Do we take the proactive items and move them up to the beginning then? Is that how you're visioning that?
Yeah, we would move the proactive items up, because what occurred last year is sometimes we get the proactive items, we're so beat up over doing hearings or whatever, that we get to the end of the hearing and everyone's exhausted, and Jacob even made the comment last year, you know, we get to the end of the evening and we don't make the best decisions we can. And it becomes frustrating, and I think that we should begin by planning, trying to sit down constructively, move through things, see if we can make decisions. We have, let's say, proposed legislation or draft legislation we want to work on, have discussion points, try and move things toward council. And yeah, and then, you know, do that for an hour, see where it takes us. And at the end of that hour, move on to, whatever else we need to do that day. And if we have extra time, we can budget that.
The start times for legal matters would start after that.
Right, so we put in legal notice 7 o'clock. And an hour isn't very long, by the way. I mean, Russ and Charles and I got together just to talk about this HB 3115 thing and some of the legal issues and things like that. And an hour went by and snap of the finger when you're talking about planning and items, so.
What about topics from the floor? Because sometimes, usually that's pretty quick, but sometimes that could eat up a lot of that first hour.
Topics from the floor before the, I think we need to start with planning, and if we could start with topics from the floor and then have planning go for an hour after that. I just want if we're gonna have a hearing, it should start on time. You know, if our hearing is noticed for 7:30 or 7 o'clock. So I suppose topics from the floor could come last. At the end of the meeting.
I think we owe people the opportunity to have their say at the beginning of the meeting, and then we can take up business after that. We have to stay here, but they can say their piece and choose to leave. I think we need to get those guys taken care of first.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is basically adding an hour of other work than the work we usually are tasked to do in this planning commission. And sometimes we have 3 hearings in a row. That's a big chunk of time already. And we just said is when the proactive items got pushed to the end, it was so late. Well, what if the hearing is so late? It just flip-flops that. And then you have the public here later and making poor decisions because they're here so late. Because the prime time or versus a special hour. Sorry, if we have a light night, sure. But
What do you think about flexibility, like on nights that it looks like it's gonna be a heavy decision-making calendar, we push planner to the end, if we can't get to it, we'll just say, you know what? It's too late, we're gonna pause the planning until our next meeting.
you have to, because that's the meat of the work we are tasked to do. No. Being proactive is the meat we have to do, but there's boring business we have to do. And it has to get done, right? You
I'm
guys need
sensitive.
help.
I'm
That's the
sensitive
help that you need.
is to get the decisions made.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily boring.
I think it's reasonable to take a look
Boring to the public.
at whatever hearing we have on the agenda, and if it looks like they're going to have a lot of public comment or they're going to run long, then we choose to push. Planning and proactive items might have to move to the next meeting. We'll block that time for it, but we need to be flexible in order to move it if hearings are going to be too much.
It's difficult sometimes. Sometimes you think a hearing is gonna be swift and easy and quick, and it's not, and you didn't anticipate that. So you already used up that hour where you can't bring back the flexibility anymore.
Well, but next week, we put out our legal notices for the public hearings we're gonna have next month. And so knowing what time you want to start those, that's pretty important. So we can publish the appropriate time.
And sometimes there's hearings that go before city council and planning commission, and those notices go out even earlier than. You can't just decide 1 month in advance that you wanna. Put a public hearing at 7 versus 6.
So let's back up. Let's just back this discussion up for a second. Let's forget about the time, whatever time it occurs. Okay, let's talk about the idea of setting aside a time as a goal. That initially we are going to, at some point in our meeting, whether it's the beginning and the end, the middle, that we're gonna meet in a collaborative environment that is sitting down, get to know each other a little better, and we kind of talk through our vision for the city and how we're gonna plan and try to move forward with plans. So that we're actually discussing, right now, we've got a lot of proactive items that I put on the agenda. But other people may have ideas of, some other things they'd like to consider, long-term, short-term. And these are things I think that we should put on the agenda, track and discuss. Otherwise, we're just not gonna end up planning. That's the concern.
Well,
Don't get another time. We're required to have a scribe, or required to have you guys? I mean, if we did a planning session down here.
Yeah, you've got a quorum, there has to be
We've got a
minutes,
quorum, we need all of you.
there has to be minutes made, we have to record the meeting, it has to be accessible to the public.
It has to be virtual, so that means you have to have 2 people running
Staff.
it now.
Yeah,
And this is, when we were talking about admin meetings, and that was part of the debate. Was just the necessary staffing, and that's why. The whole subcommittee thing came up, because then you don't have a quorum, and at least then. There is some dialogue that happens behind the scenes.
okay, well, here's my question. The planning or the city council does
council retreat.
council retreats. And so what I was wondering if we're not. Cause it sounds like we have kind of a team issue. Just based on other conversations, we have a team, a constructiveness issue that is separate from the agenda. That would help us if we worked out our team issues. Through a council retreat, through a planning commission retreat. Cookies and tea or whatever, and talk about those visions that we would be able to come to this. And then when we see the architectural standards on here, we kind of all have a groundwork without making a decision. So we're not wasting hours talking about every single thing on architectural standards. Because we've already made those connections, because granted, I was on planning commission for 8 years, it's just a whole different group of people. So I mean, is there a precedent for, instead of going a whole extra hour every single month, to setting aside that we have a new team, let's start fresh, let's, do that kind of thing, as opposed to reinventing the wheel with planning commission agenda. I forget people's names, you guys are all new to me. To Steve's point about, getting to know each other, getting to know how I communicate, how he communicates, how I listen better, how he listens better. Because people don't just pick up when they've never met each other before and work cohesively together. And it might make future meetings more efficient if we did some of that groundwork in a less nuts and bolts decision tonight, we gotta go kind of manner.
So if we all meet, we could still have a quorum.
Well, yeah,
If we don't make a
We
decision,
call it a retreat.
Yeah, just like when the council does theirs, they have to send notice to the press and
if they feel like coming, but nobody ever comes.
all that stuff.
Whether a decision is made or not, you still have to publicly notify.
Right.
I would not see.
I like the idea. I
I
think.
just thought rather than reinventing the wheel and making the meetings 5 hours every single month, I'd rather spend some time. Building some relationships, having realistic, because it sounds like not just communication, but expectation, what I expect, what I'm willing to give. What I want from Russ, what I want from Dan. I mean, Dan knows me and we've got an understanding as, Mr. Hubbard and myself, but these other guys. I've never met them until I walked in this room, so they don't know me, I don't know them. And it's like, I know Jennifer, but it's like maybe there's a benefit to having some connection to where we can work more efficiently, and that would be more efficient in the long run of staff's time if we learn how to work together. Just an idea, rather than having 6-hour meetings every week or every night. So it doesn't matter.
I'm for choosing for a retreat date. I am. I'm for choosing just a date and time. We get together. Schedule it for,
You don't have to come.
well, you may want to come. But yeah, I mean, he's liaison, he'll be notified and he can come. I think that the fact that he observed. I think the fact that he made the observation that he did has already produced some positive results.
But I think to move forward.
I'll join it. I'll come. You let me know when it is. I'll be there.
Yeah, so
Just
why don't
thinking that that might be, because we know kind of to use Jacob's language, time certain. So, we're gonna set aside this hour and 20 minutes or whatever it is, and we're gonna have meeting of the minds, hour and a half, it's like 90 minutes, so we're gonna decide, these 4 things we're gonna talk about and, have a conversation to where we could be more efficient in our meetings overall, whether it's a hearing or whether it's planning reports or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it would be,
I'm not a big proponent of having little secret meetings, is what we used to call them. It's like, we used to get together, but it's like, you gotta be really careful. And I go have a little conversation with this guy and a little conversation with this guy, and all of a sudden I have the secret alliance. We don't want anybody to feel that. So I think by making it a public deal, I think that's better.
we got some big things that are potentially coming up, and I think the more that we can pull together and understand each other and work together, the better result the city will get from us.
What do you think, Jennifer?
I mean, I think council does retreats once a year. Is that right?
The what?
Does the council do a retreat once a year?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just start with one. See how we do with one. And the sooner the better.
How much notice you need?
2 weeks.
I think the press only needs 24 hours. We would want to check with Kathy on that. It's a matter of, spring, summer. Not a good time. It should be in the winter
So you better get busy.
when it's typically slower. And it's balancing it with the joint quarterly meetings with the council. So maybe we can brainstorm. Of course, winter's almost over.
Who called for the joint quarterlies? That was us.
It's something we had talked about a little bit, and then we had some, but then evolved into quarterly.
Do you think that quarterly, how many times have you done the quarterlies?
They're just starting this year.
Oh, okay.
Then joint sessions, but the quarterly is just.
I just wondered if there's enough meat for quarterlies or if twice a year is enough.
Well, that's to be determined.
1 second. We already decided on a quarter. Let's just decide on a meeting date for us. That is,
You want a sandwich?
how about the week of the 27th
Okay.
of February?
I control.
27th? Yeah, I just happen to have a trial come off my calendar and I've got a little bit of extra time then.
Yeah. I think those brains hurting.
First, the council.
And then the following meeting is not.
Yeah, the 27th all afternoon, or after like 5. 28th at 5. I mean, I figure we want to do this in the afternoon, right? Late afternoon.
So there's some staff scheduling that needs to occur. So it's
I
just
think it
seeming
hurts
like
early as
in
four.
order, I think, well, I know Jacob's looking at the calendar because we're preparing for the March Planning Commission already and the joint planning commission city council meeting in March. So there's 2 upcoming meetings we're preparing for. And I'm of, you know, it's just a lot coming up. So we're just looking at the calendar.
Yeah, I think, need a little bit of time to think about the appropriate date,
What day is the joint meeting?
the 8th.
And city council's the first, and we both have items on city council's agenda as well, so it's. There's a public hearing on the first that I'm
So we
at.
have a joint meeting that's not on a city council day?
It's on every other, so the joint meeting's on the 8th.
Yeah, it was intentional, because the joint meetings of when they were combined with our planning efforts, you know, as part of transportation plan and stuff. And that was programmed into there, but for these now regularly scheduled ones, it's an off week from the council. That
Oh,
was what everybody decided what was appropriate.
And one person, I'll be on vacation from the 8th to the 20th. I will not be at the joint session.
Nor will I. Nor will I.
Will not be at the joint session, both of you, 3 of you?
For you guys, out of country.
Well, how about the 28th February? I mean, we're really, I guess there want to be staff input.
Well, the agenda has to get publicized and posted. So I think staff would need to vet this agenda. I think we'd want to probably involve. I would say Rachel. If you're talking about, you know, leadership building, she may have an exercise she wants to run. If you're talking about working together as a group, she does that with city council. She was instrumental in the council retreat agenda, so I feel like she has a kind of a background in that, but. I don't want to volunteer or overcommit another staff that I haven't even talked to about this.
so can we give staff time to work on this?
That's kind of what.
Instead of trying to do it on the fly?
Yes,
Cause they need to look at calendars and rooms and availability. And see what the posting time is from Kathy to make sure we're
Yeah.
following all the rules. We don't need to get in trouble right out of the gate.
I think though, if the planning commission has a goal of it occurring in March, and talking about the week, the last week of February. Because of the deadlines we have, I would say, you know, not before March 1st, and not March 1st, because that's a council meeting, so it's gonna have to be March anyways.
But could it be spring break week,
when is spring break?
20th to the 24th?
Of March.
Yes, and then you're back,
I'll be back on.
and then is anyone else out that week because of spring break?
I may have a trial on the 22nd, but if it doesn't, it may settle.
I just thought that way your council meetings are over and our meeting's over.
Well, the nice thing about that is the council meetings are over and there's still another week in the month, because those weeks without any meetings are important
Right.
for
That's right.
productivity.
So
That's a fair week. Yeah.
I just thought that might be, it gives me time.
But not Monday.
The only day that's not good for me is Wednesday, the 22nd.
Not Wednesday.
Can you just look at a
Not
Tuesday
Monday.
that week? Any little Tuesday? That's right.
All right, so we're gonna look at are we still trying to pick a date?
No, we're
Yeah.
just gonna look at that week and then we can coordinate.
Cause that answers the staff's
You guys
concerns
edited
about
it.
meetings back to back.
The no's were
Monday and Wednesday.
Monday,
Not.
20 and 22nd.
We'll look at
Okay.
Tuesday.
Does that get us a little closer?
Yeah, that's realistic.
Yeah,
Mitigate those negatives.
and then we can plan a little bit ahead right now, because right now my plan is to get stuff done in time for meetings for February, so.
When they give
Rest of February.
time, I mean, I don't know about the other ones, to think about what kind of structure, what kind of agenda. Cause before we get down the road.
Yeah, I think the agenda should be collaborative.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But we can all, can we send stuff to you singularly?
sure.
We don't like reply all, but like. Arc and whatever.
Yeah, Steve too. Yeah,
Will not be
I kind of wrote down what you said,
20th, I'll tell you that.
background and goals,
Well,
why are you
maybe.
on the commission? Vision for St. Helens, and then how to kind of move those forward. Those are the 3 items I got from Steve, and then you just, sounds like you want some similar items.
Meet.
Yes,
Yeah, I mean,
Jenny?
Yeah.
I'm trying to complicate it, but when I said the 22nd, If it's after 2 p.m. in the afternoon, I'm
It
fine.
would be, yeah, I think we're talking afternoon,
Okay, then
6 o'clock.
take off the 22nd as a no for me.
Yeah, I can be here as early as 4 o'clock now. My job changed.
You just made it less complicated.
Well, I tried.
If that makes it better for people that are worried about getting home and stuff. 4 o'clock is usually after my workday, 4:50.
You care later in the week's better than Tuesday, because I'll be getting in very late.
Got it.
But we have that happy.
But Wednesday or Tuesday works.
Yeah, I won't care, but
Where are you going?
the drawings.
Okay, so plan is then people will submit their, I mean, you heard what I kind of want to talk about, so, we will have a retreat scheduled then in March where we can, get to know each other better and work on our collaboration and, our vision and
You guys have a budget, if you guys want food, and get some dinner.
yes, yes, it'd be good to break bread, so. That'd be great, thank you.
We have a budget with money in it.
A couple of pizzas from the
Training budget hasn't been used.
Okay, and so I'm gonna, okay, so anything else on this item before I move on? Okay, so I'm gonna skip a few items because I want to be mindful of Counselor Gunderson's time and I want to move to what I think is a very important discussion item that it is going to come up. I'd like him to be participating in this item discussion. And that is the HB 3115 proactive item discussion. And to kind of key things up for planning commission, because it is going to be part of the, where we are at as far as what the planning commission subcommittee is stuck to, and it is going to be an agenda item for the joint planning commission council discussion for March the 8th. And there was an email that was sent. And I would like to read into the record a email that was sent to me and to Christina Sullivan from John Campbell. And he says, hello, I hope I have gotten this letter to you in time for consideration to read at Thursday's planning commission meeting. I'm writing to this committee as a new voice of this community. I moved here to be part of the great positive things that St. Helens has to offer. I am not naive to the fact that every city has the same set of problems, just on different scales. Through conversations, I understand this committee is trying to make choices about how to address homelessness. I'm not an authority on the subject, nor have I ever been homeless. However, I have lived through policies that has been coined as quote compassionate. Policies with good intentions can still have devastating effects in a community. Homelessness does not have a one-size-fits-all answer. It can have the same devastating outcome if careful and well thought out policies are not created and enforced. I have personally experienced how bad policy ruined the once great city of Portland, Oregon. $1 million home in Laurelhurst Park has the same homeless camp in front of it as the $300,000 bungalow in Lentz Park. These problems are only 40 minutes away and one legal challenge after another. The great people of St. Helens deserve to be protected from bad policy. Debate along with legal wisdom should be at the forefront of how we move forward as a city to tackle this problem. what starts off as quote campaign, what starts off as quote camping between the hours of and quote turns into an abuse of time. Soon blue tarps will be the backdrop in city parks. Next are pallets and tents in front of hardworking family homes. Compassion is not a one-way street. Compassion for everyone is a bigger conversation that should have merit in decision-making. Please do not follow in the footsteps that will tie up this city in legal challenges over poor choice of words. The horror stories are real and not hyperbole. Thank you, John Campbell. So that should be made part of the record. And then I have something to say about what the subcommittee did on HB 315, but Jacob, I know you made a presentation to council. Did you want to say anything briefly to the commission?
Yeah, sure. So we're kind of at a milestone in that we've been discussing this, researching it. We have feedback from our legal counsel. We know now that we need to amend our code. Early on, we weren't sure, but now we know that we need to. And so, we've kicked around a lot of this stuff. And so I created this memo just to help steer some of these discussions. And what I'm hoping for is with this joint meeting with the council and the planning commission in March, we can reach some consensus on these items. And I can go over this now, or you can just read it in anticipation of the joint meeting, either way. But that way, that'll result in some consensus, and it probably will result in some questions that we'll want to ask some of our partner agencies like Community Action Team. So we have a nice, organized, and hopefully efficient effort, which will result to us finally putting pen to paper and hopefully getting something ready to adopt before July 1st. So this joint meeting's important to try to reach that next goal. The council talked about it yesterday. It's interesting to have a meeting after the council. That never happens. It's always before, but since we moved it this time, and the council requested that the legal counsel, Aaron Heisel, who we've been working with on this, attend that joint meeting. So we have some additional input. John Wall, city administrator, did reach out to him today. Haven't seen a response, but hopefully he can make it to help with that. So this memo is an important precursor to that meeting in March.
Right. Thank you, and I think that we all should read the memo. Just to report out on the HB 3115 planning subcommittee discussion between Charles Kasner, myself, and Russ Lowe. We had a discussion about generally some of the challenges facing the decision in this area, and that there was also authorization for me to meet with John Wall, Jacob, Rachel Berry, about discussions just about solutions and how we move forward with the adoption of new codes. So basically the decision-making process is coming down to, number one, we need to have a place where people can sleep. Since it's not going to be possible for us to probably establish that we don't have shelters enough for everybody, we're going to need to have a place where people can sleep, get warm and dry somewhere within the city. Otherwise, we'll be in violation of federal law, and otherwise we will not have legally compliant laws. So the
We have to
point,
provide warm and dry.
no, we just need to, in other words, we basically need to have a place where somebody can somebody can lay down and go to sleep. Because sleeping is it's a bodily function and that,
It doesn't have to be warm and dry, that's on them.
Yes.
that's correct.
Okay.
They have to be able to, right, yes, that we don't have to put, so we could say, somebody says, look, don't have any place to go. Can't go anywhere else. I need to sleep, and so we have to have a place where you say, yeah, you can sleep. Well, there's two ways to go on this. One, we could say, you can't sleep here, and then we leave it up to them to figure out where they can sleep. And it needs to be an area where they can legally sleep. And then, and that's called the place. There's place, manner, and time. And so where you say there's a place, person then can go to that place and, be dry, so that probably involve pitching a tent or something like that. And then using a sleeping bag, keep warm, so that they can survive. And so then now we have a place, and then there's manner restrictions, and that is, okay, what can you put in that place? And then there's time, is how long can you be in that place? So that's kind of the framework of what's allowed, let's say, in the code. The next challenge that we have is the bigger challenge, and that is, how do you win the attacks on the city from people disagreeing with those place, time, and manner restrictions? And I've said this to John Walsh, and I've said it to our lawyer, is that I've said in the planning commission meeting, I believe that this law has a tremendous risk of abuse, because there are no defined standards of what the city can do right or wrong. It comes down to subjective opinions of what is objectively reasonable from the perspective of a homeless person.
Or a property owner.
Of a homeless person. The property owner doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, the statute specific to, if I may,
Property owners
just
don't-
one sentence. So this is what the Oregon Revised Statute says. Any city or county law that regulates the acts of sitting, lying, sleeping, or keeping warm and dry outdoors on public property, that's important, that is open to the public, must be objectively reasonable, as Steve said, as to time, place, and manner with regards to persons experiencing homelessness.
And so there are some ways to blend in the societal problem that we have. So first of all, Jacob has a map, and he's mapped out all of the areas that potentially are public places that are open to the public. And there's actually a little spare space in St. Helens. We can, so one question is what places? And then the next thing would be, what's the manner and the time? And there's a few developing thoughts on that. One is, well, should we just say you can't sleep anywhere in these areas and let people figure out where it is they can sleep? And then there's some other folks are thinking that what we should be doing is having a more defined area that has a more defined manner, more defined time. And then there are people who are of the opinion that that what we need to be doing as well is defending the places, being ready to defend the places that we say we don't want people to sleep. Because we're not, the statute has no fines. The statute isn't going to be the police. The statute is a statute that creates lawsuits. We're going to get sued. So cities are going to get sued. They're going to get a memo that's going to say, we don't like that you don't allow camping in a tiny human park. Nobody uses the park between dark and light. And it's unreasonable from the perspective of the homeless that the homeless should be kept out of Highly Human Park. They pick up and they leave their stuff. And so there would then be a lawsuit that would challenge that law. And if there was any victory for the homeless person, there would be attorney's fees. So what has occurred in California when you have these sorts of laws is that there's one lawsuit after another that come because one person could say, I'm filing a lawsuit for Honeyman Park. Next person could say, I'm filing a lawsuit for McCormick Park. Next person could say, I'm filing a lawsuit because I want to sleep down, by the waterfront. Another person can file a lawsuit saying, I don't like the hours from 7 to 9. I think the hours should be from 7 to 11. Another person filed a lawsuit saying I shouldn't be limited to a tent. I should be able to use a lean-to. I should be able to construct a house. I mean, every single potential disagreement that you can think of can become the basis of a lawsuit, which is then adjudicated on the basis of what's objectively reasonable for the homeless. And so the question becomes, how do you win? How do you win? That's my opinion. Is how do we defend our decisions to make sure our decisions are good ones? Which is
We have the city legal is helping us.
yes, the legal is helping us. So originally, the planning commission went down the road is that we would be studying so there's this giant, basically it says if you bring your statutory scheme into a structure that is a policy for the humane treatment of the homeless, then you are immune from suit. The suits, it says that these don't count as laws that are developed under policies of humane treatment of the homeless. So the question is, should we be developing our policies as humane treatment for the homeless so that then we have the potential of throwing the lawsuits off at the pleading stage, which means they'll be just tossed out because we will make findings of what is humane and we'll bring them in and say we followed the law and you can't sue us. And we can enforce our laws. I advocate that that's the way to go. And we're kind of at the decision point of whether we're going to go in that way. And I think that the subcommittee, the HB 115 subcommittee is also believing that's the way we should go as well. That we should be trying to develop what we do as part of humane treatment, and that we should then also be prepared to defend our decisions. So for example, a lot of cities say we don't want sleeping in parks. Jacob's been kind enough, and I think Jacob, maybe you want to provide to the rest of the planning commission if they want it. And he's gone through and reviewed all the laws that all the other cities have done. And I reviewed them all. Charles has reviewed them all. Russ has reviewed them all. And we've discussed them. And a lot of them have a lot of things in common. No sleeping in parks, no sleeping on the street, no sleeping in doorways, no sleeping on driveways. Why those laws are enacted? They don't say why. And so if there's a basis for the laws, like for example, why is it that it's not that allowing sleeping in Jaime Human Park is not objectively reasonable as homeless? Why is it that we believe as society that having that park be free of people sleeping there is something that is reasonable? And I think there are a lot of good reasons that I could think of off the top of my head. And part of the thought is, I think, as you were saying, Jenny, earlier about the rights of the people who live in the city, right? I mean,
The bills.
the people are paying the bills, and people who are paying the bills, all of them are struggling, every single one of them. And I don't care, this guy says it's for the richest of the rich and the poorest of the poor. I don't care if you live on Great Cliffs or up in the hills, or if you're, down on one of the streets here where people are not as well off, that person is going to work every day doing what they do to put their family in that spot because they, it's location, location, location. They have a right to find enjoyment. I'm paying to be here because this is a spot I chose to live. I'm getting up and working. I am choosing to pay.
And the people that follow the rules to be appreciated for following the rules.
They have a right to expect that when they walk out their front door, somebody just can't pitch a tent in their front yard
Right.
or on the street. And because that, I think the psychological damage that occurs has been completely understated. And so I don't think that we should be ignoring the psychological effect of of having folks just be able to essentially take the quiet enjoyment away from somebody who is working every single day of their life to just have that.
But is there this, not to get belabor, but is there a strategy in supporting programs that do address the ethical and fair treatment of homeless? Instead of the city, this is my thing, and just hearing what you've been saying last couple meetings, what I've heard, is the city, it's like the city is not a developer, the city is not a homeless shelter. That's not our expertise. What the city can do is we can support people that know how to do that business. So if somebody is taking that on in our community, because there are warming shelters here, there are people that are handing out safety packs, blankets, there are people that are supporting the homeless to cope with being homeless. And it's like, can the city take a better active role in that community partner? And grow those partnerships to where it takes us out of that situation. We haven't prohibited, we haven't allowed it. We are supporting this, all this number. And they will hook you up. They will tell you where you can sleep, where you can't sleep. Hook you up with blankets or whatever you need. And take the city out of it. So I didn't know if there's that strategy.
One of the problems is we've got to get the current code off the books
What's the current?
because it's
Just says no.
on its face, it's invalid.
No camping in the city limits.
Even if, we heard that we didn't enforce it, but that doesn't matter. It's on the books right now. So we've got to get that off the books and replace it with something.
I mean, it's as simple as camping camping only allowed in permitted areas.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not that simple
I know it's the
anymore.
legalese.
Yeah, and that's why we have this memo to kind of break down into the pieces and that social aspect programs that could aid. But at its core, this is the ability of the city being able to enforce.
Yeah, has Rachel's group met at all?
The task force?
Yeah.
No. And my hope is that with this joint meeting, as part of reaching some consensus on these items, it'll bring up some questions, so we'll have
Yeah, because
an
I.
organized approach.
Board and they said, call us when you got it together.
Yeah, and so the idea of this joint meeting is to help us get it together so we can be efficient with their time and have very specific questions. And I think the community action team, they interact with that population. And so when we talk about location, I think their input is going to help us and formulate some of those thoughts.
I've got a question. I don't want to derail the discussion. We're filling out the else, but do you know, or Steve, do you know, has there been any groups or any thoughts about somehow challenging this new legislation, the new statute, state statute?
The state statute? I'm trying to remember if Aaron talked about that. There's efforts about the circuit court decision. I'm not aware of an attack on the state statute itself.
I just was thinking about that before, because it's a terrible, and I don't mean the intent of it, but the way it's drafted is really bad and vague and just causes issues, and I feel like it could be challenged. Now, that's a long-term, that's not a quick fix. So I'm not, that's why I don't want to derail the discussion.
Yeah, does
Yeah, I
anybody
just wanted to ask about that.
have a read, because having been lobbying for affordable housing, the new governor is laser focused on homelessness. And so do we think there is possibly, this is not an unfunded mandate, that there might be money that we can get, grant money for programs that will help support this?
There is money. And I'm not in tune of how it's gonna be allocated. Rachel is a little bit more in tune to that.
And she'll be at the council meeting.
Um,
Did she reported that?
she has, she did her last one.
Oh, okay.
It might be good to invite her to this one.
Or maybe between now and the timing of the joint meeting, maybe I'll hit her up.
But the problem that we have is the statute says, all right, the state said, we'll give cities some time to work stuff out. And we have to have it in place by July 1st. And so there's not a whole lot of time to at least
In government land.
do what we need to do, and that is update our laws.
Because that's a process. Not a quick one.
So for the folks that aren't gonna be at the joint session, can they provide feedback on this memo another way? There's 3 of you that can't make it. I mean, it would just be good to have your
Well,
thoughts.
2 of them are Charles and
Yeah,
Russ, right?
You're both on
as
the-
I said, we have provided our feedback to the subcommittee.
So I'm assuming your thoughts are gonna be,
Yeah,
I can definitely assist you in the right direction.
if you wanna write something up too, yeah, I think it's important.
So I think it's,
I mean,
oh, go ahead, did you want to say
so
something?
me, you're really talking to.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important that we stay narrowly focused. Because that's what the law is about. It's about simply allowing a place to sleep and stay warm and dry. This isn't about anything other than that. And so that the second part of it is to defend our decision for the places that we don't want people to sleep. That's the thing, and so. Yeah, this isn't about how do we get shelter, this isn't a discussion about. How do we build more housing? This is a discussion simply, where are people going to sleep? And what are going to be the rules of their sleeping? Where are they gonna be allowed to sleep and what are gonna be the rules? And then the second thing is defending our ground. And that's what this, see, I think Jan's words here. Please do not follow in the footsteps that will tie up this city in legal challenges over poor choice of words. The horror stories are real and not hyperbole. And so we're really talking about making sure that people have a place to lie their head if they need it. And in Jenny's comments, and this is why I'm thinking that we're not very far away from developing a policy we already have a humane policy. And what it's because our police and our social services people approach people who are in need and they get the help they need already. And so part of, I think, treating homeless people humanely is what are you doing here? You can't sleep here. Are you having a mental health crisis? Are you in need of temporary shelter? Are you in need of a warming facility? And our police and our social services people are already helping people and getting in the direction that they need to go. And we absorb as many people as we can for our small community. I have not been at one city council meeting, or one planning commission meeting where I have heard a single citizen complaint to say that anybody, not one single person that has come to town has been mistreated here. So we already are treating people humanely. And we already helping people. We're a very caring community. And so I'm thinking that all we have to do is say, look, we just kind of have a policy of what we're already doing. And then we say, for those people who we can't find a spot for you, this is where you can sleep. We have a place for you to lay your head and rest and get yourself together for a day or two or three, or depending on the situation. And we have very good reasons why the places are where we say. And we have good reasons why they should not be in other places. And then be prepared to defend them. And that's kind of where I think is potentially the most successful venue or the idea. There is a concern about state created danger, and that is if we say this is a spot you can go, then we risk liability. And that's it's sort of like, it's like there's no winning no matter where you go. And so it's kind of like, do we pick our poison? But I think I'd rather pick our poison on, you know, what the law says now is we need to have a place for people to go. And I think that's to be able to tell people this is where you can go and these are our rules. We can defend that. And that complies with the law. Rather than trying to have people figure out where they can go. And then the main objective is to defend the places we don't want people to camp. I mean, you know, I think in there, you know, so when somebody walks out the front door of their house, there isn't a tent there. So. Anything else?
I think it's urgent.
All right, I'm gonna put something together as a draft. This is a draft, and I'm gonna model it kind of off that story, I mean, and then we're gonna run it by and it's just gonna be for a discussion point, that's it. And I'm very interested in hearing what our lawyer has to say about it.
So you're gonna do that for the joint meeting?
Yeah. And I'll try and get it submitted without a doubt, before the end of next week, before next Wednesday.
So is it draft law? Does that mean
Just idea, yeah, I'm gonna take that story model and just sort of tweak it a little bit, and then it's kind of draft regulations, just discussion point, draft, that's it. So that people can visualize what I'm talking about. And then maybe the lawyer says, oh yeah, this is great, this is lousy. I mean, he's the one that's probably gonna be defending us. And then, or then city council can chime in. There are different thoughts about whether we should have a designated place. I mean, there are some people that are feeling like we have a designated place that's gonna. It's gonna, yeah, it might invite people, or it's gonna cause more problems.
Yeah, that's one of the key questions is do you say where you can or where you can't? You know,
I'd say this, who we are has been good. We treated people very, very fairly. One single complaint, not one single anything. Never seen any evidence of it. And I can tell you, I had personal experience with a family member of mine that had a crisis. And the way that person was treated by the police was exemplary, and I would say that they saved that person's life. So I can attest personally that our police are already humanely and compassionately handling the problem. And all we need to do is just find a place to say to somebody who really has no other place to go is, you know, you can lay your head here. Rest, have a night's sleep. Okay.
What if we don't designate a spot, but we don't have a problem with where they stay? On a public land.
well, then if you just don't enforce it, then it's not an issue.
Yeah, so I mean, there public lands, this sounds like all public lands. And if you have a long enough list, you finally come up with all of them.
So the public right of way on your street.
Yeah, I see a homeless camp every day in St. Helens here, under a bridge. Milne Creek Bridge is. Someone living in there, it's been there for months. So, yeah, we already have that, they're already living in a public space. But do we care? Nobody seems to care, they're still there.
It's all about enforcement.
You know, maybe we should include that as a spot that
But I
we
think it's,
don't care about.
yeah, we don't care if they get washed away and die from a heavy duty blood.
Well,
Sure,
Thank you.
they're just useless people.
No, saying that, and I'm sure you
I don't
don't
think
need.
that's I don't need it, exactly.
I think,
It was Dan's sarcasm.
I know.
Danger.
The recording, that was Dan's sarcasm. It was not telling anybody they were.
The one cautionary note we said is be careful what you say on public record, because words will be twisted.
Yeah.
And so, and I know you didn't mean that.
No, I didn't.
I wouldn't carve out an exception, but it essentially is a public right of way.
Yeah, sure.
Well, there
We got
are,
lots of public right of ways around.
I've never
Undeveloped.
seen it, I drive across that nearly daily.
I have actually seen law.
Right,
enforcement
blue
check
ton,
it on-
it's hard to miss.
I've seen law
Sunset.
enforcement check it on multiple.
I think that we should give respect to the fact that,
See if it's not that, all right.
respect to the fact that the folks who, they've chosen that place for a reason. And we don't have a problem with it, and so maybe we should be figuring out, well, where are the people already? And why don't we just say, okay, it's cool if you stay there.
That might not be a consistent approach.
Yeah. Hard to
It
let.
looks like a dangerous place to stay. That's what I meant by that.
Stick with, you can stay here, here's where you can't stay, here's where you can, right? And if it's piecemealed in small spaces, then that's a kind of a inconsistent approach that might leave you open to you're the lawyer, but that's
So the thing is, Dan, I guess I'm sorry, I didn't mean Russ. So if you go back to what you said, then you're right, they can do that, but they can also then just set up camping completely in the Fort Plaza.
But that's one of the places we say no.
Well, that's not what you said a little bit ago. You said just don't put anything out there.
Why did I say anything? I'm just saying, if there's places that we don't say. Are they okay? That's what.
We didn't prohibit them.
Yeah, so we have a list, and that's
Prohibited
not
space,
a complete list of all public spaces. So then what happens to the other space? That's what I was really asking.
Okay,
because you can't list every public space.
Yeah,
no, because you're sure gonna.
and we've got a ton of undeveloped right of ways in this city.
Is this also?
You know, trying to make some trails in them, right? So.
The motorhomes, the recommendation is that we keep motorhome parking within the vehicle regulations and then deal with them as vehicles.
Yeah, so the first discussion item is definition. And whether or not you include vehicles in the definition. And then, so if it's a vehicle violation, you address it with a vehicle violation and not the camping violation. And so that's one of those intricacies that will powwow about.
Yeah, I'm dealing with city of Portland, but you call them to get rid of it and they say they can't do anything. It's kind of flat, it doesn't matter. It has no license plate. Look it up if it's stolen. Yeah, it's stolen. They don't do anything. So we had semis come in because we needed to get product out the door of our businesses. So tomorrow morning they'll get towed because we rented the whole side of the street. Cost us a couple, cost us $500 to rent it for a week. So it was our side of the street, we rid of them all, but they'll come back.
How will they come back?
They'll steal another camper and show up like they have.
Oh, okay.
One leaves, another one shows up.
Believe me, they come back quickly.
There's gunshots in the neighborhood, stolen cars. All my windows been broken out, commercial building.
So
That neighborhood.
And so this motorhomes and campers are, you give them a pass because they have a motorhome, I think that's just as bad.
That's part of the discussion.
Yeah, so.
You mentioned the story and approach and what I read about that is that they've said you can be in certain areas between certain hours. that concerns me because Russ and I work in the same areas in Portland quite a bit. And aside from tents and motorhomes, oftentimes there would be people who would camp out on the front door of our offices overnight. And we wouldn't see them until we were gone, and they'd be gone before we got back there in the morning. But what was left behind was needles and human excrement in our front office.
So we're dealing with.
And I think that underscores the importance of developing our body of evidence to defend the places where we say that no sleeping is allowed. And one of the things that I'm trying to get the city council to do, and Mark's still here, when you ask him, I'm gonna ask Mark. Money for an expert, money for somebody to defend the areas that we say no sleeping is allowed in these areas, and this is why. So that when we make these decisions, and then the event somebody challenges them, and the city gets a lawsuit, that we are ready to defend ourselves. So our lawyer says, wow, what do you guys got? And say, oh no, we've got an expert. This person's studying, there's this, and this. And then we're ready to present to a judge why it is unreasonable for to allow sleeping in doorways, to allow sleeping in parks, to allow sleeping on the waterfront. And I'm hoping it wouldn't cost that much, but build a body of evidence. And we base our decisions on this evidence so that when we make our regulations, we have good reasons. We're treating people humanely, we're allowing them place to sleep and keep warm where we say we want them. We're, reasonably safe, we're whatever. And that if those are challenged, we can defend ourselves successfully. We're gonna win the lawsuit. Boldly.
So that's the point I was trying to make about sleeping under a bridge and a stream that floods. That's not a safe place, so that's one of the places you want to make sure then you can have a good reason for it. If it's not safe.
Right, well, yeah, the
Sleeping
city
in
of Portland, because
a median on a highway,
Isn't it easier to name where you can rather than all the places you're not supposed to?
Well, that's part of the,
Yeah, that's the question.
Part of the conversation.
that's one of the key questions.
so I think one of the key questions for the council, ultimately has a decision on this is. Which poison are you gonna pick, if you say that this is an area you can, under these circumstances, then you just do your best to make sure. You avoid liability as best you can. And insure it. And then, if you go to the flip side and say. These are the places you can't sleep. And then have to try and figure out the places they can. Number one, does that totally protect you anyway? And then number two. I see that as a problem, potentially people saying, well, the person comes to town and they gotta go through all these codes and everything, trying to figure out, from some convoluted map where it is they can go and nobody will tell them. And so these are thoughts.
It's easier to have a place,
Yeah, I agree.
not have some unknown number of non-places.
And then having a place begets potential management of that place, which is not something the city's mandated to do. And so that becomes part of that equation. Do we want to invest city resources in managing a location? Is Public Works going to be happy to be maintaining a porta potty somewhere? So it's tough.
But if we do have it, we can manage it. And one of the things we could do is say. One of how we started down this discussion last year was we want to make sure we have someplace for our people. We've always been good to our people. That one thing that defines us as a people, every time somebody needs help at St. Helens, people reach out and help them. And so I just want, part of the thing is in case somebody falls on bad times, has a sudden thing, they have someplace here. If we can't catch them in one of our programs, at least they got a place. And then maybe we can have some other spot for transient folks and say, you gotta be gone by tomorrow, or you gotta be gone 2 days. We don't want You know, we're not inviting you here. We don't have anything for you here. If you don't have a job, you don't have any money, stay for a couple days and rest. Keep going. All right, go find a job somewhere.
But we don't have to decide tonight.
No, this is so
The
the,
discussion points and. I'm gonna draft something up. It's not gonna be binding on anybody and we're gonna have some other drafts and I'm gonna include as much of the lawyer. The thoughts. On a very tough subject. Okay, anything else on HB 3115 from anybody? Counselor, any comments from the counselor?
Well, you wanted that funding. Will you send me an email with like a ballpark figure?
Okay, I will explore if I can even find an expert and then see if they'll give us a budget and then we'll go from there. How does that sound?
That works for me. Yeah, that sounds good.
and Steve, you're talking about an expenditure prior to July 1st.
Correct.
So in the current budget cycle.
Right, so that we have somebody that can say. Really say, well, what's the matter with the idea of somebody sleeping in the dog park, you know, overnight? What harm is there for that? And that person will say, okay, this is the harm, and I'll tell you why, and this, that, and the other. We have got good reasons. Why we have protected areas. And it's so that the people who are paying the bills, as Jimmy Carlson says, have a peace of mind to where they can go to someplace and be safe and relax, because it's hard enough just getting through this life.
I see this pushing people into the private lands, but. That won't make the city residents very happy. And stay in the public lands, so now they're on my property.
And that's a question too, because our code is,
Those are preferred public lands. That's
well,
the idea.
that's part of the question.
It's a conversation to have.
So, you know, one of the discussions we've had is, okay, place A, you could stay here for 48 hours. And then place B is 24, you know, so do you favor certain areas or not? So you could structure it that way.
Okay, anything else on HB 3115? Then we're gonna move on, and then we had architectural standards on the
We still have an agenda item that
That's
you
vacation.
skipped over.
Yeah, we have one that,
Has to be the-
unless you want to relinquish your recommendation to the council, we need to discuss.
No, I was just gonna try and say we should table that till next time, but okay, we'll move to pre-vacation staff report. Item E.
So this is a street vacation plus. There's some other things that I'm hoping for feedback from the commission on. But this is a public hearing before the council. And we want to make sure that we have a recommendation from the council on this matter. So
What would you like shown?
the maps,
Okay.
we'll just go to each map. This is a property,
Before we get into it, it's when I was reading this, one thing I didn't see is what instigated, what drove this, why now and why are you doing it?
oh yeah, that's a great
I
question.
didn't even talk about that.
This has been,
I know what it is and all that, but.
yeah, so cleaning up that right of way has been on my to-do list for some time. Several years.
Okay, so it's just.
And the reason, the timing of it is this winter was the first winter in many years, 4 or 5 years, where there was an actual slowdown. There was kind of one last year, but so much of my time was focused on that, getting the GIS and aerial photo update, that no time. So this is the first time, the first winter that I had time to, hey, I can be proactive myself and look at my to-do list and pick something to get done. This it's on the strategic plan. And, oh, good, I can work on this. So that's,
Okay, no other reason.
That's-
All right.
yeah. it was on the list, I finally had time to do it, basically. Um,
No, I'm okay. So we're vacating these streets not to do anything with that bluff, just to get rid of them?
there is no proposed use at this time, but it is cleaning up the property, and this is why there are other matters that I would like to discuss with the commission. They were shortcomings that we observed when it was in private hands, including the challenge of vacating that right of way. And now that it's in our hands and it's in unified ownership, which I will show, the time arguably is right to do these things. And I think it's important to do them before there's a third party involved, because then it just gets messy. So that's the reason for the timing. Now, if you disagree, that's fine. So first of all, location. I'm sure you all know where the middle school is at. You can see that labeled, and this is just east of the middle school. And if you're used to looking at topography maps, the topography contours are on there, and you can see that it's kind of a bluff. It's a bluff. It's kind of like a plateau. So that's,
Up there, it's a big thing of rock.
it is.
Typical, let's say else.
Yeah,
And that's why it was part of that famous S. St. Helens LLC versus City of St. Helens over mining,
Yeah.
which some of you were here for that. So that's where we're at generally. If we go to the next slide. So the area highlighted in yellow is city ownership as of today. And just to give you a sense of scale. On the 12th Street side. You have a great difference of about 30 feet, that's on the west side. The southeast side, the lower right-hand corner there, where it abuts a wetland, you have a difference of around 50 feet. So it's a substantial landform that we have in St. Helens. Which, you know, we're used to because of our rock. So that's what we have now. Now, this next slide, this shows the zoning. And there's some things I want to point out. Because I talked about unified ownership. And if you look at the plan development overlay that was adopted many years ago, you see just these pieces. I'm like, well, that's weird. That doesn't make sense. Well, it makes sense if you understood that how disparate the ownership was for this topographic feature. So at one time, it just had a couple of these pieces, and they were trying to make this work and doing these weird things with the street, trying to use this right of way. You know, this is a cliff and this is the cliff. So this right of way, and it's void of utilities too. It's kind of this weird thing in the way of that topographic feature. This other foam board exhibit I have, these are from that earth removal case, so I had to use them since, because I had part of my souvenir. So before, and just so you all can see it, before we purchased this, we owned this weird piece here. And that's because the street goes through it. And in addition to having this, now we have this as well. And when we look at one of the next slides, that gives us an opportunity to make a clean cut to dedicate that right of way.
Is that 12?
Yes, 12 to 11, yep.
So owning the property and the street through it, I mean, what are you saying?
What I'm saying is we had these pieces here. So if we look at this, if we didn't have this, we would have these sawtooth things in there. But now that we have it all, we can make a nice clean cut even along the side of the street. So because we have it now, we can do a very efficient right-of-way dedication.
I think he was asking how the street ended up on private property. how it wasn't right of way. Is that what you're quite, like, how?
Well, you've got this public street going through, you say you own these lots.
The city owns them, yeah.
That's not normal.
Right away through. You know?
I think he's trying to ask.
No, and that's why we're proposing to dedicate it.
Gonna stop and 11th is gonna stop.
It's common, it's fairly common for. Well, we know that the grid pattern doesn't make sense based on topography. And it's fairly common for a city to own property where a street goes through it. Because it's, okay, well, it's in public ownership, public road, okay, fine. No longer encroaching on private property.
Like the jog is 7th to 8th. South 7th to 8th. Jogs. Is that in a right of way already? 7th to 8th jog, you know what I'm talking about?
I need to look it up on.
Okay. It may be fully in the right of way.
So you're saying having that property makes the right of way easier for sidewalk, storm and all that.
It makes it clean to dedicate it because there's. Because if we didn't have that. There would still be these portions.
Okay.
So now that we have it, we can dedicate it and have a nice, clean cut. That parallels the street.
Got it.
Which, when you're picky like me, from a mapping standpoint, that's important. And it's better to dedicate the right of way now, so we're not fighting someone later on. Well, we don't want to, some challenge over dedicating the right of way, which is not common, but could happen with the right party. So if we go back to zoning, so at its core, this is a recommendation to the city council about the vacation. But there are some other things that I'm hoping to get feedback from the planning commission on. And a couple of those pertain to the zoning itself. So if you look at this area, you see that on one side, you basically have apartment residential, and on the other, you have our general residential R5 zoning district. And since all that sits atop a bluff, kind of in topographic isolation, and based on that legal case that we had, removing this in its entirety is mining, which is not an allowed use in the zoning district. And so the intent then of our zoning ordinance is to help preserve some of these rock features, at least from mining, not from development. Should we have uniform zoning atop that feature? And if so, would you want to go with apartment residential to maximize the potential density, or perhaps R5? Because you have both sides to choose from. You could even go crazy and say, well, we think it should be public lands because it should be a park or something. But there is a zoning question that I just wanted to pick the planning commission's brain on. A related one is that plan development overlay. So if you remember the Comstock subdivision, what that plan development overlay does, it allows certain flexibility within the zoning. So for example, you can throw out the minimum lot size, it's all based on density and things like that. Having it be partially there, it's kind of weird. And so should we just get rid of it? Or should we expand it so the overlay covers the entire feature? That way someone later on has that tool to utilize if we do end up selling it to someone. Or do you not care and just, if someone wants it, they can apply it for it themselves?
You can access that to it by 11th Street.
The current access is from 10th. Yeah,
Oh, you're over on 11th, yes, 10th I meant.
yeah, 10th is.
Yeah. And that'd be about the only access you could ever have up there.
Yeah, unless you graded this out, but it's pretty
Yeah.
steep, yeah.
So we learned from even the previous development before the mining one, that any street going up there would be too steep for fire trucks. So it's really not very developable.
Sprinkle just means they have to build it to an alternative standard. Which probably would mean sprinkling.
And if it was an apartment complex, you'd have to sprinkle it anyway.
But
So not being able to access a fire truck is not a limited sprinkle. Is there any other steepness of street code? Besides getting a fire truck up there? Or slope?
We do have the standards. It's been a long time since I looked at that, so I could get back to you on that.
I think what the old land unit development plan had a fairly long ramp to get up there. It's a lot of excavation to do it. Keep the grades so precipitous, right?
Of course, the big part of that case was, we're not saying it's not developable, because that would have
I
been.
don't mean the one the mining one, but the one before that. That came up, they showed that. You approved that. But it was too steep for the road it takes so much land just to get the ramp up there. The grades.
Yeah, and I don't know what the dialogue was, they had a variance for a street and there was some weird stuff that. Honestly didn't make much sense in some of those.
That was part of the planning commission, I asked further, I saw it later.
Yeah,
When you zoom out, how much of it is apartment residential and how much of it is R5?
roughly half and half.
And then as far as the new move forward as to allow higher density. Is the direction of the state. Coding says that. Is allowing more types of buildings in. Zones.
Right now, our housing needs analysis says we are okay for the 20-year planning horizon, but. Per the state's mandated schedule, we have to update that in 2027, somewhere around there. And so we'll have to see what the inventory comes out then. But right now, based on our comprehensive plan and all of its addendums, including our housing needs analysis, we wouldn't be. We wouldn't be compelled, thank you, Jenny, to go to the apartment residential needle. Of course, if we still have it at 27, we can just wait till then.
Cottage clusters, be a whole village up there on that mountain,
So
tiny homes with views.
So the zoning question is just, one of those, I was curious to see if the planning commission had any feedback. And if you don't think we should mess with the zoning now, that's perfectly fine.
I personally think it should be open space and really unique habitat. That would be a really cool nature park.
Have you been up there before?
Oh, yeah.
How similar is it to the Nimitz Liberty lot?
There's about half of it's Camas on the southern edge. There's a wetland in the middle, it's been delineated. It's full of bases, but that could be enhanced. It's interesting, it's a neat view from the clear. It's a unique place to be in the city. Doesn't have houses on it. A place like that, unless you're in the school ground. Really shouldn't be hanging out in the back 40 there.
Well, your process will be cleaning it up quite a bit. Look at it, so maybe that we could listen to whatever buys it or whatever, that what they would think, the vision for it, plan you to develop. Another odd piece of property that, just like the other one, is you gotta have that flexibility on this site,
That's much water.
so.
As water.
So your thoughts would just be wait till if and when there's a third party and see what their thoughts are.
When I get done off the street.
I join Dan's thoughts on the land. It's grassy, camas, deer habitat, lots of trees. I think that a lot of wildlife, haven for wildlife. It's big enough to actually things can live up there. It's gonna be extremely difficult to develop. It is solid rock. I think it's this guy that tried to develop up there really decided he wanted to turn it into a mine and just mine basalt. And that ended up being a big controversy, so. Yeah, I've been up there too, and it is quite a piece of property. That. Has some merit to preservation. I don't know if that's on the table or not.
Well, that would be the zoning public lands. Does anybody else have thoughts on that?
I'd like to see it developed. Housing,
Russ, do you think that would be cost prohibitive to develop that property?
well, I'm a matter of, my project is about a block away from there, 1 block. And we've been two and a half months on breaking rock.
So I guess a better question would be, is a builder gonna be interested in that?
He is, but he's gonna have to look hard at sewer lines and that sort of thing, getting off that bluff, and I'm not sure where, if you have any idea where it go, but we don't need
The
to.
sewer is actually on this map. You can see it.
Yeah, the green line. It's by that driveway.
Not bad, so, it's a challenge, but I mean, I think that you get enough units up there to make it worthwhile. And it is a nice piece of property up there, the view and it gets you above everybody. So it's, it's all solid rock still, so your building up there is gonna take a lot of
Expensive.
boring and stuff, so.
You have a little wetland to deal with up there too. Little perch
Yeah.
wetland.
And that can be, worked, isn't that,
Right in the middle,
right in the middle, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember that one from the.
right above that's where it says purple, that little.
There used to be a house up there.
Yeah.
It burned because it became a party spot for teenagers.
Still the foundation that. stuff on
There is.
Or see it?
But I think it's a unique little piece of property that, could be developed in inner city and.
It'll be quite visible from, if it's developed from the remainder of the city. So,
Russ, just to ask a question on a follow-up, you said if you could get the number of units, do you think it's about the number or the quality? Like if they were higher end because of the view, I'm thinking of, would it be?
Oh, I could see 4 houses up there possibly if the views were good and it was a. More of a private street that would come up and service the houses. I don't know the square footage or acreage there, but
Yeah, I think it's just under 5.
I'm not a spec builder for that stuff.
Okay, I'm just curious.
You're leaning towards apartments or units.
No planned development, so you could have housing or, that's why I'm saying leave any decision on zoning open right now. Because if they get someone interested, or if I ever took a look at it, I would want to come to you, ask. To do something specific, as it worked.
is this for informational? Are we being asked to make a decision? What's the?
Well, I just wanted to see where the planning commission landed on it, as we clean this up. If there was a strong consensus, we could let the council know about that. If it's kind of all over, let the council know that too, but probably nothing would happen.
Very supportive of making it right away for 11th to 12th. Dog.
I second that.
So any more discussion on the zoning?
Well. Yeah, I think that, I think I am concerned about the zoning a little bit. I think if we're gonna. If it's gonna be that visible, we're gonna have apartment residential, talking about architectural standards and talking about our, if we're gonna allow apartments to be built up there, they're gonna be able to see from everywhere in the city, and so they're gonna be landmarks. So. I just think we need to be careful before we allow apartments up there. They need to look. They're gonna need to look good because they're gonna be there a long time. And they're gonna be seen from everywhere. You see the entire city. I mean, you see the whole city from that phone. So. And that's from the ground.
I'm in the parkland.
Russ,
I would leave the zoning as is.
Like they're asking my vote, park.
there are two Russes.
I guess I hang that thing because I realize that we're underfunded in parks. But with all the pressure for rock and mining and all the. Just barely off the fringe of Highway 30 that is getting blasted to smithereens. It's like when you have a chunk and you have a choice to save it. How many more McMansions does this town need?
At least 4.
You know, I mean, that's just my thought process is less like, I think that the future of housing is not gonna be McMansions. I think the future of housing is gonna be people using smart development and smart uses of assets and materials.
That's why I said you leave the zoning.
You got room for both.
For the guy that's gotta make it happen.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit sensitive on the amount of high density housing we put in the last 2 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's gonna come to you and say, well, this is what I need to do up here, and this is what I think is good, and that we could review that. So if we leave the zoning sort of open,
Then they have to ask.
they have to ask.
You have a feel for where the council wants to do with this property they got stuck with? You wanna make money off it, or they?
I don't have a feel at all, and the council's changed a lot.
Yeah.
So, in fact, they probably didn't even know we had this until I
Yeah, it's a whole new group.
presented it to
The only
them.
person that would know is the mayor.
The mayor does,
The
yeah.
mayor's the only one that knows.
Yeah.
Be nice to be a building on top of us.
Are you pleading the fifth on this one, Charles?
No, I say leave it as it is for right now.
And then was there some discussion about street vacation too?
Yeah, that's the main thing. I wanted to cover zoning because it's one of the things about this property. So the vacation itself, if we finally go to the next slide, so. This shows the area to be vacated and the area to be dedicated as right of way. So we have the property going through there. It's weird. Let's dedicate it. And I already checked with our city engineering department. They're in favor of it. So as part of cleaning it up, dedicating it, it's easy, it makes sense. It sounds like there's some favor on that. And so that's part of the equation. And then but the public hearing that we would have with the council is vacating the area in purple. And that is, so you're not gonna have a street going this way. This is all protected wetlands down here and it's super steep. And over here, you also have topography issues. So then why not vacate this now, which we can do as a city and we can do easier with the council basing it on their motion instead of someone having to file petitions and that stuff. There's no utilities in there at all. And so that's why we're proposing it. So that's the key thing we would recommendation on, but the action that we're intending is the public hearing with the council, and if they find in favor of it, we would vacate that and dedicate that. And so those are intended actions. The zoning is just kind of getting a feel for things, but we are intending to basically swap some rights of way.
Another question about that, so the previous developer was gonna build out as platted, as streets and lots were platted. Basically,
And the reason is
You're right, because they, you know,
and the reason is because they had no success on having it vacated. They tried, but they weren't able to get the consents needed.
so. I guess what I'm asking is, when that's vacated, what does the tax lot look like? What does the tax lot layout look like then?
Well, you will still have those lots.
They don't extend.
The
In the middle of the vacated road.
I don't know if I have a good
Future.
exhibit that shows this.
Part of the parcel does.
Yeah, if you go back,
Oh, yeah, that.
Yeah, that one. So that shows the underlying lots. So what happens is these
Sorry, I was trying to get it closer. You could barely see that line.
lots, all the ones that face this right of way basically grow
Right.
into it.
They'll still remain the same width, but they'll be longer.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you go with the plan unit development, that's what they'd be stuck with still.
But,
But if there's no road there, how would you ever
well, they would,
utilize those lots?
so
Don't cul-de-sac up there.
they would need to be replatted.
Okay, all right, it would have to be a plan unit development, so what I'm trying to get at, seems like,
Not necessarily,
really.
not necessarily. Because you have those lots, you could potentially develop rights of way within there. Carve them out there and then assemble some of the lots as needed. The other thing we could do, and I talked to John about this, John Walsh, way back when, was we vacate the right of way and then we do a partition and just wipe all those property lines clean. We could clean the slate and then they're not in the way.
If you don't clean the slate, trying to understand how you make streets out there, so some of the lots become streets
Some of the lots become streets, yeah. Yep,
somehow.
and so,
Then they become like the one we're just doing,
No,
a right of way.
you dedicate them as right.
It is a right of way.
so, yeah, so
Like we're doing now.
for example, let's say you utilize the driveway coming up there. And then the right of way is carved through here, and then you have a cul-de-sac, and then you assemble the lots as desired for your development areas. It's easier for me because I've seen a lot of stuff.
Okay.
They don't look very different. Be easier to start over than try to utilize those lines.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
But
That's up to a developer to decide.
what you can't do so you partition it, a one parcel partition to get rid of the lines. What you cannot do with that partition is vacate right of way.
But to vacate the right of way first.
Yeah, and so that's why we're talking about doing that now. Cause it's really, you don't really need an 80-foot wide right of way that doesn't link up to other feasible street connections.
You're basically doing the work for a developer to come by and say. You make it more
Exactly.
palatable through sale.
Or if it does become park, well, it's just cleaned up. So that's the intent of what we're doing.
Would it be easy for the developer to just clean up the lots? The city, after the street's vacated?
If we did. I mean, not necessarily, it wouldn't come out of the city coffers. Cause we would need to hire a surveyor to do the partition. Yeah, we can't just do that in-house. This stuff we can. So there'd be some expense to do that.
Slate thing.
But a developer, they may want to utilize those existing lots of record.
AR, which is valuable if a developer wants higher density already there. And the R5 could, you can't change that. Right?
Why not?
I mean, if you're thinking it as flat.
Well, we're leaving it so they could
Yeah.
choose what they want.
Choose what they want. But what I'm saying, that block over there, AR. If they want to keep that, then it's not on starter for any changes. They could change the other side.
How's it a non-starter for change?
Well, they can use the AR there and change the R5, not to an AR though.
Oh, if they wanted to change the zoning.
But that's a process they would have to go through and they could. So that's why, again, it's like, don't bother with zoning right now.
Why could they change the R5 to an AR? You said that if you leave it the way it is, so they have options, so what options do they have? It's not the way it is.
They could up zoning, you know, you'd have to go through the process,
Okay,
Process.
I understand.
the process that everybody loves. And then the next slide is just a little closer view of the area to be dedicated. Just you can see that a little more closer. And that's it. So at a very minimum, well, we got feedback on the zoning. If you would like to provide a recommendation for the dedication and the vacation, this would be the time.
I recommend we ban or vacate 11 as proposed and dedicate the right of way as proposed.
Motion,
Motion on that.
all in favor?
Aye. You guys mind if we vacate and there's a motion being proposed whether vacate or we dedicate 12th and vacate 11th as recommended. Okay.
Thank you. So, Steve, the architectural standards, you talked about deferring that to a later meeting.
Well, Jennifer's not here, it's kind of her point anyway, and I was thinking that maybe. Yeah, I'd like to defer. that.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. The timing of the memo, you know, we've been talking about architectural standards off and on for several years, and so I've always imagined, okay, the first thing is we need to look at what our parameters are. And so having actual time over the holiday winter season, I'm like, oh, this is the time to get this thing put together. Probably not gonna have the same amount of time as the year progresses, so I took advantage of that to put that together. That way we have that as a guide as the discussion progresses. That's why it was in this particular report or agenda.
Okay, so is everybody okay with moving this to just the next meeting?
Yeah, if you want another hard copy of it, or can you keep your copy so that we don't have to print a new version of it?
It was a packet.
Okay, but
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. And it'll, you know, just like any proactive item, it'll continue to be on the list, so.
And then I'm jumping back up to planning director decisions. Any discussion on that? Anybody want any discussion? Okay, so then those will be approved. And then the planning department activity report for January.
About getting caught up.
no good.
It does.
For a minute.
It feels it, in November, I'm like, finally. Year after year, finally, time to catch up.
Remember your freak out calendar.
And I haven't had burnout weeks since October. So also. Recharge the battery.
Do you have any FYI items?
I can talk about the Gable Road Apartments, our Broadleaf Arbor.
What's that?
As you can see, they are progressing. I met with them earlier this week just to talk about some of their completion facing. They have a community building. They want to get occupancy for that this month. And then the first residential building, because there's multiple buildings in there, they'll look at one of those opening up in March. And then progressive opening on the other buildings, with the last one being the largest building. One of the ones closer to Gable Road being in October, and then the street improvements will be mid-year. So if the schedule is as they hope, by the end of the year, that project will be done.
You said the bigger, is that the
That's a
townhouse, is not the elder housing.
Yeah, the elder housing, big L-shaped building is the last one that will come online.
Last,
What specifically are the street improvements?
The street improvements will include sidewalk, curb, street trees, and a median. There's gonna be a median as part of it as well.
on Gable Road.
That's on Gable, yeah, just Gable.
The massive left-hand turns from happening. Cause it's ugly, it's everything. I had a question, because you guys had some Columbia View Park stuff on here. Right before I came to this commission. And what's the status on the redevelopment of Columbia View Park? Are the borders changing? Is anything changing in the dividing? I mean, from the original plan, because before I left city council, they had the expanded park. That will go down in front of Gracie.
The Cowlitz.
Yeah.
Cowlitz, yeah, so that site plan that's out there, the park is being expanded per that site plan.
Do we have a timeline?
Yes, we're gonna bid the project this spring and we'll know more about construction timeline once we bid it.
And what's happening with the gazebo?
It's getting replaced with a stage.
So is that going to happen before 13 nights?
No, we're gonna do notice to proceed after 13 nights.
Before Halloween time, in that tiny little envelope?
So, yes,
Okay.
probably so. I think there will be some site improvements or grading work that might happen before Halloween Town.
And then.
I think the bigger impacts for Halloween Town are on the waterfront property.
With the lack of parking,
Yes,
and are we addressing that somehow?
not with my planning permit. I think that's a discussion for city council and with the contractor.
Yeah, just, I mean, I'll just go on record, my neighborhood up on top of the hill has really enjoyed use of the waterfront park and sorely misses that.
The access from Plymouth Street, yeah,
It's not, easily accessible
yeah,
and it pushes. You know, the thing I really like that is it kept people off of the main road. I've nearly been hit on Old Portland Road a few times with my dog.
yeah,
So it's like, if that's the choice, then I'm not walking my dog.
it's temporary,
Yeah, I mean, temporary, but it's 2 years.
yeah.
2
I know
years and somebody that's 6 years old is a long time.
based on your feedback about the Plymouth Street gate being closed, our engineer walked the site with the superintendent with every intention of looking for a way to have pedestrian access through Plymouth Street. And there's just no way. They're staging areas right there. It would be very unsafe for anybody walking through an active construction site and also create safety concerns with people having access to their construction equipment. We even talked about, we brainstormed every potential option.
Yeah, 'cause
and
it
it was not feasible.
I asked Ben, because I have not been able to since my back surgery. If it was possible to go through Nob Hill and go down those stairs, and
The pump station is right
Ben
there.
said no.
Yeah.
And I said, can you go down the dockside stairs? And Ben said, no. You have to go all the way out and around, so you might as well just skip it. And he's like, I'll just walk to McCormick Park. It's just my dog is high maintenance now.
I see. Yeah.
So, personal thing is like, I gotta pay more for groomer stuff and it's a lot farther away. And the summer months, I'll definitely really miss that. That as an option to come down and sit on the water, because being near the water is very relaxing. That's why a lot of people.
Yeah, and the waterfront side is completely open, it's the Plymouth Street access and the Nob Hill staircase that are closed, so you can still access every bit of
You
waterfront.
gotta drive down,
During construction,
go the other way.
and we were very specific about still having access during construction, and it took a lot to get that, so.
I just wanted to go on record that it was not without some argument and some pushback to try to make that happen.
And I kind of want to rejoin on that since you brought it up is I too walk a lot and use both of those staircases and trails quite a bit. And connecting Nob Hill, kind of makes a loop, so. So who is the who should anybody talk to if we want to try to address staging and clearing of different areas of the area being developed? Who's the
The
person?
project manager for the streets and utilities project is Mohammed, our public works director. Sharon, he's on a short leave, so Sharon has been stepping in over the past few weeks. His mother passed away, this past week, so.
But maybe there's some, if it's not immediately possible, but maybe as areas can, because as I get ready to go on another trip to the Capitol and they're like, well, the construction has moved away from this end and they're able to move their equipment and then all of a sudden you can get access from Rob Hill.
Yeah.
But as soon as to make that window of time that it's completely occluded, as you know, if it's an opportunity to open it up sooner than 2 years, that would be awesome.
Yeah, 2 years is the full construction window, and
Right.
it's likely that that section will be opened up once the pump station is up, and running, and they'll, move their way towards downtown.
Yeah, I definitely understand that, temporary because that road has to connect and it's not gonna do it on its own.
Well, it's utilities too,
Right.
the underground utility, there's open trenches. You
Yeah,
can't.
there was nothing, there was no utilities on that property when we started. I get it. No problem. Thank you for the information though.
It's on there.
And the park though, the actual park improvements won't be done this summer.
No. No,
Yeah,
that
we're
would be
gonna-
directly.
I think there's some discussion, when we're gonna break ground on those park improvements and. Whether we're gonna wait till after 13 nights on the river's over.
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, is there
That's
anything
not a
else
question.
in parks in the city this summer?
Is there anything else in parks in the city this
Don't you
summer?
sit on the Parks Commission? Don't you watch the parks?
No.
You don't do that anymore, Trail Lady?
No, that's not my job.
No, because I came to a hearing and you were talking about a kayak dock down at the other end.
Oh, yeah, as related to the Marine Board Technical Assistance Program, yeah.
And is that going forward?
Dan will tell you all about it. Yes, it is.
Are you the one?
Well, actually, I don't know the
It's,
timing of it.
well, as far as I know, the Marine Board was gonna hire their permit tech. And they were having a hard time filling the position, so the last I heard, it was just on hold until that position was filled. We're kind of at their mercy. It's a free program for us to utilize, and so I know we're next on the list. They've already done the survey work of the site, they've done the bathymetry. They want to do the project. I think it's just a capacity issue right now.
I haven't seen a permit application,
Yeah,
And then,
and because there's no tech to process
and
it.
then,
but next week I'm getting a permit application for. St. Helens Marina. Improvements down the boat ramp.
so
It'll
now
be several years.
on the island, there were improvements slated for the island. Because they were gonna do some planting, some.
There's,
Shelter.
Stuff going on out there.
What?
There's a lot of stuff going on out there right now.
yeah, there's cabins and a couple,
Yeah, I haven't been on the island since
Shelters.
before Brad did anything. Last time I was on the island, I was volunteering to clear limbs, so Counselor Keith Block could mow. When it was primitive camping.
yeah, they're building structures.
Yeah, I rode over there with the barge. To pick up garbage with Keith.
Now there's a shuttle.
I haven't experienced the top cabin transportation. I have the dinghy transportation. But thank you for those updates. A lot of people, because I'm out and about in park, ask me, what's the status on this? What's the status on that? So it's nice to be able to spread facts. Sure. Instead of what I heard. Thank you.
Yeah, when Mohammed gets back, I'm gonna talk to him about. Opening up parking and areas for the 4th of July, see if we can stage that out. That's gonna be a problem because. We had a lot of folks who not only park down there, but rented. We had slots that people could rent and then
Tailgating.
people came down there and tailgated, and they came down with their families and.
We
I think-
managed for a lot of years with no talking out there.
Well, it was great last year with everybody
Right.
having a great time.
Oh, newer. The tailgating is newer.
Yeah. Us old folks know all the secret spots.
Yeah, a lot of people came down there and set up tents and it was really hundreds literally of people that were families and saw a lot of people down there, so. I think it'd be good to open it up if we can.
We'll come plan, I'm sure we'll hear about it.
And so then.
That is.
Well, I think there's there's new proactive item proposals.
I think we're gonna bring those to our retreat.
Okay, yeah, I think it's good that people should read them and kind of. I just want to kind of quickly fire off where some of these things came from. You almost made it? Yeah, you almost got it. All right.
You had a response for my question on the amphitheater audio.
There hasn't been a sound study.
That's all I needed.
What time is the meeting on the eighth?
Know what that- We have an electrical engineer who's designing the system. Is there a specific type of audio study that you're expecting? I mean, are you asking them the intention?
Amphitheater, they've got reference that comes in and like that, talks about hardship.
Acoustical engineer.
It's a whole.
Sure. No, there's not an acoustical engineer on the sub.
It might be important. Because it could, we're gonna change something that's been the same for a long time. We would hope we would do it correctly.
Well, that's was my question and I thought it would be a good question to your engineers and designers and say,
We also don't have funding for a new like sound system. We're using the same sound system that 13 Nights has been using. So I would assume an acoustical engineer would tell, like, give you recommendations for a new system. Which is not in
Will it be
part of
covered?
the project.
Is the area gonna be covered? The stage.
Oh, yeah, there's-
yeah, design, and see, that's another.
The position of the stage, a sound study would also tell you how to position the stage and the angles and
Sure.
stuff.
yeah, but I'm just to, you know. Equipment is not in the budget, lighting and things like that is,
No, but that's, creating the sounds is one thing, your budget and all that.
sure,
But it's someone looking at the structure and the hard surfaces and what it's doing is.
Yeah.
There are people that do that.
And it could be based on sound that's not amplified. And that wouldn't necessarily be amplified sound.
And they may look at it and go, it's an outside amphitheater, no big deal. And
Yeah.
there's winds that can take into account all sorts of things.
yeah, we know it's a windy
I
site.
just didn't want this, city to come back to you. And bitch, they can't hear about it.
Sure, well, I think anything would be better than what's there now.
So, Tricia was asking about the angle of the stage. Is there a drawing that shows the angle of the proposed stage to how
Yeah, we
the?
discussed the angle of the stage probably more than any other component in the park at this point.
Is there a drawing? Somebody asked me, is there a drawing that shows?
Yeah.
Like, if you're standing on the area.
Like what the view would be.
Yeah, where are you gonna be
There's been a study from sitting in the amphitheater seating, what the view of the stage would be. Our team has come out to the site multiple times and staked out where the stage was proposed and kind of mapped out and, just kind of how you would look at it. But there hasn't been a rendering done from that.
There's additional amphitheater seating to actually make it more, more seating, more circular, or.
And this is
More
something that
so,
keeps coming up because there's a member on the Parks Commission who's convinced that we have it wrong. And our events coordinator, who we've met with specifically and individually multiple times with our consultants, and then still disagrees after the fact. It's just been this ongoing, like, back and forth issue. And I'm quite frankly frustrated that we're this far along and it's still coming up as an issue. So.
Where can the public find whatever drawings are available?
So there's a river walk project homepage that has our drawings on it. So if you go to the waterfront redevelopment site, click down to riverfront, Riverwalk, then you'll see the most up-to-date plan, so. Yeah,
Okay, so then we'll table the rest of the proactive items discussion for our retreat.
Okay, so take that off of the normal planning commission agenda then?
Well, no, leave them on for the next time. If we have enough time, people feel like talking about it, we will.
Okay, now,
Using the architectural standards one.
we've printed them now twice. Do you want hard copies of them?
yeah, we're gonna ask you to hold on to your hard copy. So we don't have to-
No, we already said we're gonna hold on to.
Well,
Up there.
for architectural standards and there's a couple other proactive items.
Yeah, I assume we were holding all of those until we're done.
Yes, That's what we're
Yeah,
asking.
let's leave them on. If we have time, then we can go over them. It sounds like everybody's ready to go. So,
My best.
all right. Anything else from anybody else?
Do we interrupt your nap, Mr. Freeheim?